Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the GTSRL Season 35. It's round 1, and today we're focusing on EU Division 3 as the series wraps up its final set of races at Autodrome Lago Maggiore GP circuit located around Lago Maggiore, or Lake Maggiore, in Italy, of course. I'm your host, Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, and, well, the story over the last 2 days has been an absolutely sensational one. We've had highs, we've had lows, but all the way through it we have had pure adrenaline and pure excitement, and I'm sure that tonight's races are going to continue the trend, if not amplify it even further, as we look to bring the first week of racing to its conclusion tonight. Now, of course, it is the same configuration as last time and over the last 2 nights. We've got 3 races up for grabs, 2 short sprints, i.e. 6-lap sprints, and then one longer endurance race of 12 laps, going from 6 to 12 laps, doubling the distance, if you will. And the machinery available to all of our drivers is their pick of choice, and they're ready to tune it so long as balance of performance is applied to their cars, and that is the Group C machines of the Le Mans era. So without further ado, let's start introducing the drivers who make up EU Division 3, and we'll be providing you with your viewing for tonight. So we are going to start off with one Mr. Trousers of Doom. So running in the Sauber Mercedes C9 1989, Trousers of Doom is one of those drivers who we haven't seen as recently running around in the GTSRL seasons. You've got to go quite a way back, if I remember correctly, in order to see Trousers back out on circuit. But Trousers here bringing a very lovely liveried, Vodafone liveried Sauber Mercedes here, echoing in a way some of the liveries of the McLaren Mercedes Formula 1 cars. That harks back to the early noughties. We're looking more towards, say, the 2006 to 2009 era, heading into 2012 before McLaren started to move back to the orange and blue liveries of Bruce McLaren. But Trousers of Doom here looking to do his utmost today, and he's going to be joined alongside in terms of his teammate by one, as we check our notes here, one Reflex 92, or as seen on the race circuit, the Portuguese driver of Edge Zhao, who we're just going to refer as Edge from this point onwards. Now, Edge is a newcomer to the GTSRL, a newcomer. This is his first season within the racing series, also running around in the Sauber Mercedes C9 in a very similar livery, in fact identical livery bar race number car to his teammate Trousers of Doom. Lovely looking livery, that one, and we wish him all the best on his debut in season 35 tonight. Now, moving away from one team and coming on to another, we head over to another Portuguese driver, a newcomer as well to the GTSRL, and this is his first season as well, and that is Vitor Knight. A driver who has shown a huge amount of promise behind the scenes, in the fact that whilst he did not have the best of time trial sessions compared to a good number of drivers and missed out on getting into both EU Division 1 and EU Division 2, it is reported, there's a rumour down the paddock, that Vitor has got a very fast package at his hands in terms of driver and car combination, and we could be expecting some surprises from Vitor. If he's not on the front row in qualifying, expect this driver to be doing his utmost to get all the way up to the front and win each and every individual race. Vitor is one of the favourites behind the scenes from what we're hearing. Now, outside of looking at Vitor, of course, we have to move to his teammate, who is Jerry the race car driver, also known as Jerry R driver. We're just going to see if we can find Jerry out on the circuit currently. Here he is. Here's Jerry, also running in a Sauber Mercedes C9 like his teammate. From the Netherlands, Jerry, a rather friendly driver and one who is looking to do well in this season. We haven't seen him in a couple or a good few seasons now of GTSRL, but he's coming back. I think he might even be a newcomer, but don't quote me on that. But Jerry looking to have a point to prove here, debuting with the Sauber Mercedes alongside his new teammate, of course. So these two will be going for it and looking to make their mark on the season. Now, coming away from these guys, we head over to our Turkish driver, Furki the Viper. Furki, a very friendly chap, and I believe relatively new to GTSRL as well, or at least hasn't been featuring in seasons as of recent years. Or I say recent years, recent months. But Furki here running in the Sauber Mercedes C9 as well. A lot of our drivers switching to the Sauber Mercedes C9, not going for the Porsche 962C, as you're going to see. There's only a couple of drivers running that, and we've also got a surprise car choice, which I'm very pleased to see. But enough talking about other drivers. Furki, a rather strong driver from what we're hearing so far, and looking to do his best as he makes his debut tonight. And alongside Furki, he'll be joined by Oli Sagas, who we're just going to be waiting to see if he's out on circuit at this time. We can't see him at the moment, so we're expecting that he'll probably be joining in the near future. He's just getting the car ready in the garage. But whilst we're waiting to pass him effectively, we're just going to come over to one of our other drivers here as we switch on to Trails of Doom briefly. But we switch over now to another driver in the form of Slimmy running in the Mercedes Sauber, of course. Sorry, the Sauber Mercedes C9. Another one of these drivers running this very notable car as he picks up a half-second penalty for running beyond the track limits at turn number 7 there. Now, in terms of Slimmy, he's a newcomer to the series from what I gather, debuting in season 35 tonight, and he is going to be joined alongside by Buster J24. Now, Buster is a driver who is well known amongst the GTSRL community, hasn't raced in a good number of seasons as he brings the car into the pits, which is a little bit unfortunate. Actually, we were looking to take a look at his car. There we go. And Buster is bucking the trend here, bringing out perhaps one of my favourite Group C cars of the 1980s. That is the Jaguar XJR9 with its very powerful not 6 litre, more than that in fact. I think it's 8.4 litre V12 engine, an absolutely ferocious engine to listen to, and you'll know when somebody's coming down the straight with one of these because you'll hear it from a mile away. Not the same volume tone as the rotary engine of a Mazda 787V, I might add, but still, this Jaguar engine, you'll definitely hear it when it's coming. And he's joined alongside by another driver. Now this is of course as we switch over to another team, we go over to BSR's Bright Spark here, also bringing out the XJR9 Jaguars. So 2 Jaguar drivers here, which is fantastic to see. Bright Spark being another relative newcomer, a returnee if you will, to the GTSRL, featuring in season 35 today and making his debut here, looking to do his utmost as well in a very beautiful livery Jaguar, may I add. And he'll be joined by one, as we're looking on the team sheet here, R-Duck Killer, who we're going to refer to as R-Duck from this point onwards because nobody wants to harm the gentle ducklings, from the Netherlands. R-Duck is bringing out the Sauber Mercedes C9, so we switch back to that Sauber Mercedes trend. And R-Duck is one of those drivers as well who hasn't featured in the more recent seasons of GTSRL from what we gather, but again looking to make a mark tonight as he's just sitting in the pits at the moment, composing himself in preparation for the races ahead. Coming away from that team then, we do have to make a mention to one Mr. Hellcat 789, who is going to be running out in the not in the Porsche, I should point out. They do look similar, but mark my words, it is a Nissan R92 CP. I believe one of our only, if not the only, Nissan driver for tonight. And this is the car which we've been wondering when it was going to appear because of its sheer ferocity down the straights. But enough about the car, about Hellcat, a fan favourite within the GTSRL community. You'll see him on the Discord every so often, and one of those drivers as well who has got quite a bit of pace underneath his heels, indeed in his hands, and looking to do his utmost tonight to do well. And he is going to be joined teammate wise by one. As we take a look away from our screens very shortly, we will return. 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. Just got to refresh our note screen. We will be taking a look at his teammate, who is K2 San. Well, K2XAN, or we're just going to call him K2 from this point onwards to make life a little bit easier for ourselves. Now, K2 is not out on circuit currently, so we're just going to wait for K2 to join. But outside of that, that's an introduction to all of our drivers who are currently out on circuit from what we have. So we've got a few more drivers to introduce as the night wears in, but we're just waiting for them to turn up, of course, so we'll give it a bit of time. But in the meantime, whilst we're waiting, and we've got our drivers all piling in at the moment on the Discord, so you can imagine that they're going to be coming out on circuit in due course, we're just going to flick out and take a look at the lobby to let our host know how many, and our host is MDC, just to let him know how many cars are going to be running tonight. So 2 seconds, we can see one, well, including MDC of course, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different drivers, including MDC and then myself as commentator. So we're just going to let the stewards know. Really, what can we talk about in terms of what we can expect tonight? Well, the thing is, because we're not going to see that many, if any, so far, I should say, Porsche 962Cs, it means we're going to expect a different flow tonight. We know that the Sauber Mercedes C9, which is being featured by the majority of drivers here, is a very strong car in terms of the late game in the races, where it seems to come alive in the second half of each race. But on top of that, it's the handling car here. It doesn't have the straight line speed, but it has the ability to do very well, particularly in sectors 1 and 2. Now the contrast is the R92CP will be absolutely ferocious. That Nissan will be the fastest car in the run down to Big Banky Boy at turn 11 and up the hill towards turn 14 as the drivers move on to the final sector. The flip side of the argument will of course be that the R92 is going to be the weakest car theoretically unless a driver puts in a very good tune, of which we only of course have the one driver running the Nissan, and that is Hellcat. You can imagine that R92 is going to struggle in sectors 1 and 2, so Hellcat will be looking to mitigate that where possible and maximise the deployment of the straight line speed down the straight in sectors 3 and 4. The XJRs that you're seeing out there as featured by two of our drivers, so that is BSR's Bright Spark and also Buster J24, that's going to be a bit of an odd car because it's not really exceptional at any one particular thing as we look to find one of them running around on circuit currently, and there is the classic livery of the Jaguar. The thing about this car is it's not exceptional in any one particular thing, but it's one of those cars which is very planted to the ground. It's a wide car and it's got a lot of aero on it, so you can imagine that as the drivers are throwing it around the circuit here, they're going to feel very confident in terms of if they want to turn in on the steering wheel, the car is going to turn in very nicely. The only thing they've got to worry about from testing the car personally is that second and third gear can have a tendency to understeer, particularly on the downshift from fourth into third gear. You can get some understeer in the corners and they're going to feel that particularly in sectors 1 and 2. But in sectors 3 and 4, this car will be very planted, and particularly in the final sector, you can imagine this car is going to have a very high apex speed just because it is planted down to the ground. As Bright Spark goes through turn 14 there and gives us a demonstration, getting a little bit sideways in fact there, getting on the power, perhaps just a little bit too soon, not recentering the steering wheel as comfortably as one would like. But those are the things that they're going to have to watch out for in terms of what could happen at any given point in this race. And really, we're waiting to see what our other drivers are going to bring to the table. And actually, let's introduce a driver here who is McCall83. Now, McCall is running in the Porsche 962C, so this is one of our only Porsche drivers here tonight. Now, we know this is the balanced middle ground car. Appears to be not just a British driver, but given the livery, looks as though he is a bit of a Scottish driver. In fact, running the Scottish flag down the side of the car, at least on the left side panel. But the thing about the Porsche, of course, is that it's got that overall balance of characteristics for this circuit, and McCall, a relative newcomer to the series, or at least a returnee. We haven't seen him in a long time if he has been running in GTSRL seasons, and McCall, unfortunately, is by himself technically in terms of team. So whatever McCall scores here tonight, it's purely for himself. He's not as part of a team championship alongside another driver from what I've got on my team sheets here, but you'll imagine that McCall's going to give it everything he possibly can in order to try and get the best possible result. As all of our drivers will do, of course, but that's just unfortunate for McCall. And speaking of another driver who's just turned up, it's Jerry, our driver. Jerry, the race car driver in the Sauber Mercedes C9, who's from the Netherlands, and he is partnering up with Vitor Knight from Portugal. And Jerry is another newcomer to the series, a relative newcomer from what I understand, debuting in season 35 here. And he's going to be doing his utmost as well in a rather fancy liveried Sauber Mercedes with a red and white twinge on it. And those are all of our drivers introduced. I believe we do have everybody in the lobby now. We're maybe waiting for one or two more, just keeping our eyes on it. So we're just going to back out very briefly. And we can now see that there are 10 drivers out on circuit plus 2 in the lobby, and there's 13 of us in total. So we are still missing 1 or 2 here. We're missing K2, for example, who we cannot see at this point in time, although we are about to get a message from MDC. And whilst we're waiting, we are just going to take a very quick glass of water. And be sure to let me know in the chat who you're rooting for tonight. As I say, personally for me, the one to watch out for will be Vitor Knight. I think Vitor's got a lot to prove tonight in terms of mentally he'll want to prove that he did have the pace to get into Division 2 and want to be right up the front of this division from the outset. It's in these quiet periods as well whereas we just simply wait for things to get underway. Now, one thing to talk about here, having done this myself personally, what starts to go through your mind when you've got those stuck checks coming up now, what with it being 8:45 Greenwich Mean Time? And welcome to Stanley, who's just joined the stream. Welcome, a good friend. When you're sat there and you're waiting, or you're doing the practice like what Hellcat's doing right now, your mind starts to go into that bit of that neutral place. The nervousness perhaps kicks in at this point because you know you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. You want those start checks to get underway so you can get that practice of the race start. And then after you've done those start checks as well, you just want it to get to 8 o'clock so you can get underway with qualifying. It's one of the hardest parts, in my personal opinion, in terms of turning up for a race day, is that waiting time. As soon as that waiting time passes, it's all as good as gold. But whilst you're waiting, it's just an irritation, and we just had confirmation, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that K2 will not be joining tonight, so the Dutch driver will not be racing and will be not featuring in round 1. So that means we are going to have a grand total of 12 drivers racing tonight. Well, sorry, I should say 11 drivers racing tonight, because we are also missing one other driver at this point in time, and that's Ollie. Or Ollie, however you want to say it. Just waiting to see if Ollie does turn up. I think start checks are going to be starting to get underway very shortly as Hellcat goes wide out to turn 5 there. So whilst we are waiting, having talked a little bit about the mental aspects of going through this whole waiting procedure, let's find a driver who's coming to the end of the lap and let's ride on board and take you through the lap as always, and we'll have the capable McCall83 do so for us today. So riding on board, of course, bringing up the telemetry data as well. McCall here going a little bit side to side out at 16. I think a little bit of latency and actually bringing the car all the way down to 2nd, and I think Paul's in the game now. So I think responding to let our stewards know that he can hear MDC in the voice chat. So we're going to jump away from McCall's car for now, because our stewards are calling out and requesting that everybody is able to hear them. Everything seems to be coming together right now. Everyone's just simply parked up and waiting to get back out on circuit. Although we do have 2 drivers who are going around at the moment. We do indeed have somebody driving a Nissan. Somebody has just asked whether that is true. Yep, we will switch over to them. It is one Hellcat who's going to be running the Nissan tonight. The R92 CP, very ferocious machine down the straight, with a maximum top end speed according to the Bouncer performance without tuning of approximately 232 miles an hour, as is achievable on some of the tracks around here, also in GT Sport I should say, with the longest possible straights such as Circuit de Sarthe or Le Mans 24-hour circuit without the chicanes. I think, as we've just seen one driver go out, that is Arduck there in the Sauber. We are having some difficulties at the moment, so our drivers are unable to hear our stewards in terms of announcing the start checks and when racing is getting underway. So we are going to be delayed a little bit by a couple of minutes, so we're just going to follow our duck around. And in fact, what we're going to do, we are going to switch to the perspective of one BSR Bright Spark here and follow them on that Jaguar as they go around for a lap. So switching the telemetry on, coming down to turn number 1 there. Braking at the fences before the 50 board, coming down to 2nd gear, chucking it across the entry curb and then swinging the car down to 1st gear. And you'll note that he's trying to get as much rotation as possible with that braking down the 1st gear before coming over to the right for 3rd. He's going to use the upshift to 3rd here to rotate the rear of the car because it interrupts the power flow. And now coming into turn 4, could have gone a bit further to the left, but perhaps feeling not as confident, what of his tyres being worn from so many practice laps. But you can see he's now very confident on the power and charging down towards turn number 5. He'll be looking for the end of the grey strip on the left hand side and braking there, trailing it in, although being very heavy on the brakes there, so not using as much trail braking as some other drivers. Coming down to second gear now, charging up towards turn number 6 and going through the triple chicane and medium speed corners here, essentially trailing it in third gear, not getting as tight to the first apex as perhaps designed, but cutting turn 7 perfectly and not quite getting the car all the way over onto turn 8's inside entry point, but getting 9 and 10 nicely lined up and now charging all the way down to turn 11. And what you can imagine here is it is literally go hell for leather, coming up into 5th gear. And you can see that he's actually tuned this car to have a very extended 4th gear, only going into 5th gear literally at the end of the straight. And the tyre wear is kicking in a little bit. Got on the power a bit too soon out of Big Banky Boy. Might want to consider using 3rd gear there and then using a downshift to 2nd once coming out the corner to help improve the run. And now we're getting on with our first stuck check. So that's going to bring to the conclusion the rest of the lap that we were following there. But a good lap by Bright Spark in terms of giving us a demonstration of what the Jaguar can do. But stuck check number 1 is underway. What you can imagine is, looking to the right hand side, of course the right hand side from our screen, so Hellcat for example in this one here, they'll be on the left from their perspective. They will have the advantage into turn 1, and the guys who are starting in the even number positions are going to have to try and go round the outside or get a very good launch before attacking into turn 1, so that way they can get the move done under braking. Of course, if you're on the outside for turn 1, you'll be on the inside for turn 2, and if you can hang it around well enough, you can force the move as they all get underway. And you can see Hellcat getting a very nice start there, as the rest of our drivers are having relatively good starts. Arduck did not have anywhere near as good a start initially, but then he's got the kick up of that sailboat and braking very deep as all of our drivers come charging into turn 1, all making it through safely. You notice they're all giving each other a good amount of space here. We can see a little bit of a clash of side panels there between 6th, 7th and 8th, as Hellcat's falling a bit further back now, and all of our drivers are starting to come to the end of their start check, as we see that Jerry Buster has been sent a little bit wide there, but it's innocent contact, and that's going to bring an end to stuck check number 1. Well, as they're all coming charging down towards turn 5, but they will gradually quit out now. And a good number of our drivers here are newcomers, so you can imagine they may not be as acquainted with the procedure compared to our veterans, whereby they leave after the first sector's pretty much coming to its end, where the drivers here, they all left just coming into the braking zone for turn 5. That stuck check went well, nobody got stuck on the grid, so it's all looking good so far in terms of setup. And we'll probably get another stuck check underway in the very near future, just to make sure they can go once again. And we are hearing some concerns that the lobby may be frozen at this point. Seems to be some technical issues occurring right now, but we're just going to wait and find out. And I think what seems to have happened here is that the race is still quote-unquote ongoing and the lobby is frozen. So it may be the case that our host is going to have to crash the lobby and form another one. And welcome to you, Gomez1988, who's just joined the stream chat. I can see who you're rooting for tonight, your Portuguese colleagues. We do wish them the best of luck. But we do unfortunately have an issue right now where we seem to not be able to get any cars out on circuit. The lobby still seems to think that there is a race ongoing. Of course, there is no race going at the moment. So I think people are going to be told to leave. Yet we've got people leaving the lobby in their droves. So we're going to do the same. And MDC is going to set up another lobby. But we can iron out these technical gremlins now, of course. That's the whole point of doing these start checks. And to those of you tuning in right now, I hope you're all doing well and you've had a good first half to your week. We're over the hump days, if you will, the first 3 days, and now it's all uphill as we make our way towards Friday. The classic weekend, and we get that bit closer to Christmas. And the lobby has just been reformed, so we will join. Now, one question you may be wanting to start to ask is what can we expect in qualifying? Because we know we had the absolutely absurd pole lap in the EU Division 1 of a 1:38.0 as set by Olaf Biscuit. And I believe last night our pole lap was in the very high 1:39s, if I remember correctly. And tonight I get the feeling we could be looking at a pole lap of approximately a high 140 or somewhere in the 141s. Because of course that's the whole point of grading different divisions. You start off with your top division, who are the fastest drivers based on time trial, then you go to your middle division, who are the mid-set in terms of pace, and then your final division, who are the slowest drivers, but by no means worst drivers. They may not be as fast in terms of lap pace, but they can still be very competitive drivers. So that's what we're hoping for here, at least in the 141s for a pole lap. We know some drivers have said they've been really struggling to get beyond the 145s, but of course it all comes down to experience. A number of our drivers as well may not have actually run in Group C cars before this season on GT Sport. And it's all a learning curve for our drivers, and indeed even the veterans here will learn more information as they do each subsequent lap. But we're still waiting. I can see more of you popped in, so welcome to you, Robert, to Moon, and also to Zoronic, who I think has been here a while, but we're going to say hello to him anyway. And we won't forget about Lerb as well, the first person to tune in tonight. And we've also got Stanley, who earlier called out the fact there is a Jag here, and we've also got the Nissan in the form of Hellcat. And we would have loved to ride on board with Hellcat. Let's see if we can get a little bit of onboard action here and listen to the sound of that wonderful Nissan engine. And in fact, we've got another start check happening up, so we're going to have to postpone listening to that Nissan's engine to a bit later. Okay, so start check number 2, and hopefully everybody will be able to pull off again. And if everybody's able to pull off, of course, then that'll be great news. And then if the race ends once everybody's left the racetrack, that'll be even better. I say it'll be 11 drivers tonight. We are missing 2 drivers, but still, we've got a good field. And there'll be Buster, who's going to be taking it away on the front row alongside Hellcat. So a Jaguar and a Nissan on the front row, just that initial practice start. Let's see if we can find out any information in terms of their starting potential. You can see Buster with a tiny little bit of wheel spin there, but the traction control kicked in. But look how fast that Nissan is in terms of the launch off the start-finish line. And you can see that Buster has defended immediately to the inside as a result of it. And I think anybody who lines up alongside that Nissan is going to be immediately thinking of that, noting just how quickly that Nissan was able to build up speed in the run from first to second gear there. That is phenomenal acceleration. And also look at our Jaguar drivers. You can see that Bright Spark has managed to gain a number of places as well on the start. Of course, it's not a competitive start here, but this is all information that will be going through our drivers' minds in terms of what is and is not possible as they're all coming down to turn 5 and backing out of the race. Still waiting, of course, and we are very, very hopeful here that we are going to be able to get underway, as just one more driver needs to leave the race circuit, and hopefully that will cancel the race. And the race was cancelled, so we have successfully completed the start check. We have not had a lobby issue. So 2 minutes to go until qualifying is meant to get underway. We may have one more start check because of what happened earlier. We're just waiting to find out. But again, to reiterate for those who are wondering, we are missing 2 drivers tonight. We are missing both Ollie and we are missing K2. Those 2 drivers unable to turn up by looks of things. K2 thrown in the towel at the last minute due to a personal issue. We wish K2 and Ollie all the best, of course, in their endeavours tonight, whatever they may be doing instead of racing. Of course, we'd love to see them out on circuit, but sometimes personal issues come up. Whilst we are still waiting, of course, to get out on the circuit, we are just going to be expecting another start check anytime shortly. And welcome to Tyler, who's just joined the chat. So we've got a good mix of cars, and actually I'll bring up the manufacturers on the right hand side of your screen right now, and you can see exactly what everybody's running there. Although we have had one driver, oh no, my apologies, no, that's an accurate screen there. I'm just getting things a little bit mentally wrong. As we switch over to the spectator cam for, I suspect, the final stock check before we get underway with qualifying then. And remember, whilst we're waiting there, it's a good time to go grab yourself a cup of water or a little bit of popcorn or a snack. We're just going to take another sip of our water. And that is an absolutely lovely livery on that Jaguar there, I must admit, what Buster's running. If liveries could give you bonus points and bonus speed, Buster would have all of them. And you can see once again that Nissan really does have the legs on the start, but then again Buster is getting very well versed in defending that inside line, and you can see that this time he's gone a bit deep under braking and the Hellcat's trying to go around the outside, not defending. He's trying to go around the outside and he's got the momentum, and I think he's going to have the momentum running all the way down. As we can see in the rear of the picture that there's been a bit of a coming together between Furky Viper and Arduck, where Furky went onto the grass for a tiny bit there, but our drivers gave one other space and there was no major incidents, and we've had some really clean runs so far in terms of these opening start checks. The overall concertina effect of the drivers hasn't been felt as much, and it's really worked out actually. So I think we could be looking at some fantastic opening sectors on lap number 1 with very little collisions. Alternatively, perhaps all of our drivers are holding it back at the moment and getting ready to give one another the elbow in the face and the side as we go into race number 1. Again, just to reiterate, in terms of our cars, when our drivers do ready up, we are going to see that we have a couple of Jags, we have the one Nissan, we have the one Porsche 962, and then the majority of the field is the Sauber Mercedes. And if you're wondering why have a number of people gone for the Sauber Mercedes here, well, they will have seen through the 2 divisions that have already raced this week that the Sauber was the handling car and seemed to be one of the more comfortable cars to drive in terms of for those who are not used to Group C, and perhaps that's why they've elected it. They see it as a car that they're able to have greater control over, albeit perhaps it's not the car that can get the best lap time here. We believe that that is the 962C with ample tuning. Again, the Jaguar drivers here just throwing something different into the mix, and the same with the Nissan driver here in the form of Hellcat. They're going to be mixing up the field a bit. But we're just waiting now for the announcement that qualifying is going to be getting underway any moment in the near future. And one of the questions of contention right now in stream chat is, what about if we were to run a season whereby drivers would have either cars drawn by lots, so that way you are assigned a car and you cannot pick your car for each given week of races. Alternatively, it's a random variation each week. So literally everybody is told for week 1 you have this car, week 2 you have this car, and week 3 you have that car. Now that can work out indeed, but of course you do have that element whereby drivers will complain if somebody who they know is very comfortable in a particular car, they get assigned to that car. Meanwhile, the flip side of it, of course, is that you may get a car which you're absolutely terrible with, and then you've got to suddenly figure out how to drive it before race day. Personally, I think it could work, or the alternative would be, imagine if everybody could pick their car on week number 1, and then on week number 2, you have to do it in a system whereby the driver who is currently at the bottom of the standings gets free choice, and you limit the number of cars of each one based on the fact that so many people went a particular car. That would dictate that there is a potential bias towards a particular car. But again, the circuit changes week on week, so that also is something you have to throw into the mixture here, in the fact that, well, that's also a good point. You could keep the circuit unknown. So there are a number of things that you could do to vary things. But again, if you keep the circuit unknown, then what you'd have to do is get the drivers to pick their cars a certain amount in advance and then announce the circuit immediately afterwards, so that way they've got time to practice it. Because the thing is, you've got to give drivers time to practice. If you're someone like me, so I'll give you an example of how much practice I put in. Running FIA races, when I'm really gunning for a position in an FIA race, we're still waiting for things to get underway, ladies and gentlemen, hence my natterings. But when we've got FIA races, I'll normally, per day, I'll put in 2 hours of practice or 3 hours of practice, and I've got a week to prepare, so you can imagine that's a grand total. If it's 3 hours an evening, and I do it every evening in the build-up to one, that's 18 hours worth of practice. So I want to know the car, and I also want to know the track inside out, so that way I can't get it wrong unless I over-push the car. Some drivers may take that approach with regards to practice. I know many in this series and also other series who literally practice religiously. We're doing our final start check, so we are going to do one more start check and then we're getting underway with qualifying. Other drivers here will turn up with a very limited, if no practice at all, and so you do have to cater to an extent to that. And that's why you'd need to announce things well up in front if you were going to do the random cars, alternatively the track announcements after drivers have picked their cars. So this time we're going to look a little bit further back down the field. And in fact, we've got the two drivers running in the McLaren Mercedes liveried Sauber Mercedes C9s. So trousers are doomed towards the front of the pair and then Edge behind them. And they both get a reasonable pull-off. You can see McCall, however, getting a very strong pull-off in P9 there. Not able to make it count just yet, but under braking here, he might try and hang it around the outside. And in fact, he does hang it around the outside on braking, but he does squeeze Edge quite heavily there in the braking zone. I think he just didn't respect that, as McCall actually backs out of it completely. And you can see that McCall there also showing already good sportsmanship credentials in the fact that he recognised he did squeeze the driver on the inside into turn 1, where it wasn't perhaps required. And our drivers are now going to be jumping out the lobby because they are getting absolutely craving to just get out on track and get qualifying. So we have had it confirmed to us that as soon as this race ends, we are getting qualifying underway straight away, and we could do with our driver getting off the circuit. And one driver has left the room. That is not good news. We have lost the driver, so they're going to rejoin. That is not good news at all. And Salimi Cam has rejoined, so hopefully that was just a very quick technical glitch. But all of our drivers are now getting out underway. So qualifying is underway, folks, and it's time for us to see who ends up on the venerable pole position at the end of the 12-minute stint. Put your money down now, folks, and we'll wait to find out. Now, of course, as our drivers are going around here, they will have 100 litres of fuel in the car. They will need to try and burn some of that fuel off in order to maximise their lap time. And whilst we're waiting for them to go around, let's talk a little bit about the fuel. So the thing about fuel is having a huge amount of fuel in the car. Natural thing is 100 litres of fuel is going to add additional weight. Let's say it adds 100 kilograms. The more of that you can burn off, the lighter your car is, and naturally on the straights in particular, the faster you're going to be because you're trying to accelerate less mass. On top of that as well, it means you can be more aggressive in the braking zones. You can brake a little bit later because you're having to retard a lot less mass by comparison with if you were coming in there with a full fuel tank, because there's less mass to slow down, so therefore you can afford to brake later and be more aggressive. But another thing as well, having more fuel in the car and more weight means that actually you're putting more wear in the tyres, because the heavier the car, the more tyre wear, because more mass is pushing down on the tyres, and the tyres are expected when they go through corners such as turn 11, which Buster's going up to right now. It's corners like these which are going to be taking the greatest amount of wear out of the tyres. And Buster getting it very cleanly there, not running as wide as perhaps he could, but a very smooth line there, and we wait and see what Buster can get up to as qualifying goes further and further. So with that, we are going to come around to see the first of our drivers then begin their opening qualifying lap, and that will be BSR's Bright Sparks. We're going to ride on board with the Jaguar driver here from the United Kingdom as he takes it away. So coming up to 4th gear and crossing the line to begin the lap. You can see charging up towards turn number 1, then braking down to 2nd gear, getting nice and tight in, not using the full entry curve there, but coming down to 1st gear now as he's coming through the corner to essentially line up for turn number 3. Getting a good line up there, could have used a bit more width, but coming up into 3rd gear, gets the rotation and the lift, and could have used a bit more width of the circuit into 4 as well. And you can see it's actually compromised his ability to take a tight entry line into 4, and he's missed the apex and actually ended up trying to oversteer the car through the corner on exit, and now he's charging down towards 5, and you can see that he's reacting quite early to turn 5 there, perhaps not feeling confident to stay as wide as possible to the end of the grey rumble strip on the left hand side, which is the standard brake marker for turn 5. Now coming up into 6, he's going now here but not using the full width of the track, and this is perhaps indicative of a driver who's not feeling as confident with regards to track limits or the width of their car compared to others. That normally happens, and it's not a bad thing about a driver, it's just a confidence thing, and they can look to boost that up as they do more and more laps. Now charging down here towards turn number 11, braking at about that 50 board, braking from 5th gear, and you can see that very late upshift to 5th gear there, and you've got to wonder if he's going to plan to tune that out at some point, because every upshift in these cars costs about half a second in terms of time, because you have to do a manual gear change here. These cars do not have the twin clutch semi-automatic transmission the modern race cars. Now coming up into turn 14, braking down into 2nd gear here, may have waited to actually hang the car in 3rd, because that has rotated the rear of the car a little bit, but he's got it stabilised, but you can see the rear of the car is snapping on him through 15 into 16, and he might want to really consider extending 3rd gear in order to compensate for that. As he comes out of 17 then to complete the lap, and he's going to be the first of our drivers across the line here with what is going to be a 1. Well, no, we have had no lap time set whatsoever there. That is very odd. So we have not had a time set by his car. Let's just try and put all the race info on and see what we can find out. So that was a 143.5 there, and we've got Trouser Doom currently sitting on a 142.5. So Trousers setting the opening pace as Buster comes across the line with a 146.7. So Buster a bit off of our 2 fastest drivers so far. And then we've got Edge coming across the line with a 143.0. He'll be wanting to get into those 142s, I'm sure. And then Hellcat coming into the pits, so he's burnt off a bit of fuel, I reckon, on that opening lap. McCall coming across with a 145.6, and then we've got Buster still there, and we've got Hellcat coming out. He's going to get in the way of Arduck there. He's going to have to be careful because he has come out, but that's one of the problems with the pit lane. You are ejected onto the racing line going into turn 1. You have that tight inside line, it means you're positioned on apex. Arduck with an impressive 143.1 as well. And as we switch over and look around the field, the Portuguese driver of Vitor Knight coming in with a 143.2. We've got McCall, who had that 145.0. Then we've got Slimmy Cam at the moment, who's come across with a 147.3. Not having the best of opening laps. And then we've got Hellcat at the moment, who is on his first qualifying lap because he's burnt some fuel out of the car. And then we've got Jerry, our driver here, coming to the end of the lap. What can Jerry do in his Sauber Mercedes? From the Netherlands, he's going to come across with a 143.9. That's a good lap by Jerry. And looking further down the field, we've got, not Hellcat, my apologies, we've got Furky Viper coming across, or Furky the Viper, I should say, using his full name. And, well, that is the end of his first lap, and I think he's just been doing a little bit of fuel burning on that opener. We've got more drivers coming through again now, so Trouser doomed for a second qualifying lap. Will he beat his 142.5? Yep, up to a 142.1. We're moving into the midfield pace of what was EU Division 2 yesterday, so that is a good lap by Trousers there. I think he'll feel very chuffed with that one. We've got Arduck right now slowly creeping through turn 11 there, just taking it gently, probably just simply giving the tyres a little bit of a rest and simply psyching himself up for another lap. And as we look across and around the field here, we've got McCall, who's having to back out because of picking up a penalty. We are not seeing anybody improve so far, with 2 more drivers coming across the line. Although Vitor's going to feel a bit inconvenienced there, as McCall just simply is in the middle of the circuit. And Vitor, I think, will be aggrieved at that, as McCall is getting the car controlled and back under positioning. And you can see Vitor has improved to another 143.2, but he'll reckon that he had a 142.8 there. So he'll want to go again, and he'll be a little bit annoyed with that one. Now we have got Bright Spark, who's on an out lap right now, so we will keep an eye on that, of course. We've got Jerry, who's coming around on a new lap. And you can see as he's charging up the hill here with that traction control on, cutting a huge amount of turn 12 there. He's got to be careful to overcut that, because that's going to put a lot of dirt on the left-hand tyres in particular. And watch as he comes into braking for 14 here. If that dirt has really taken hold on those left tyres, what you'll see is those left-hand tyres will simply not have the braking force that the right tyres will have, and the car will start to go sideways into the corner a bit, and it will look quite difficult for them to get back under control, and it will cost them a bit of time. But Jerry coming to the end of his lap, and this is definitely not an improvement. This is well off the pace. So this is probably just a sighting lap, and also to come in for a new set of tyres there, which would be a smart move in my opinion, as we can see that Edge right now sitting on a 143.0 still. We're just going to follow the Portuguese up the run into sector number 4 here, so he's going to the end of sector 3 with turn 13, taking it nicely cut there across the curb, and now charging up a 10th down right now, but you have to imagine that he might have something in the bag in the final sector here. Team Vodafone are definitely locking out that front row provisionally at the moment. We'll call them Team Vodafone because it is the Vodafone livery car, so we're going to stick with that. And good shout there by Gomez in the chat for that name. And as he's coming to the end of the lap, then we are going to see whether he improves and whether he can give himself some space from Arduck, who's currently provisional P3. And he comes across the line with a 142.8, so that's an improvement by 2 tenths. Now, will Arduck be able to respond as he's coming to the end of his own second qualifying lap, if you will? And you can see, and then that's Sauber Mercedes, the Dutchman, doing a good run here. Getting a little bit wide there onto the grass, coming into the final corner. That is going to cost him a little bit of rotation, but he seems to have got it stabilised. But you can see it has knocked the wind out of his sails a little bit, but this doesn't quite improve. He's only 15 thousandths down on his previous time. Now we've got Furky, who's coming up through with a new lap potentially, as he's coming around into the end of Sector 3 and onto Sector 4. And very close to his current time. So we're going to follow the Turkish driver, I should say, through the final couple of corners to complete the lap, and come through 16 at this point, and then 17. Will he be able to improve? He's going to nail 17 as best he can, using the rumble strip on the right hand side to get the car in, missing that entry curve just a little, sorry, not the entry curve, the apex curve there, just a little bit wide of it, and I think that's going to cost him some time. And it is a slight improvement by just shy of 2 tenths, or 1:43.0. So that was a rather good improvement. That's put in provisional P3, and it is really starting to heat up in that P3 spot, in terms of the fact there's only 500ths between Furky and Arduk, and then between Vitor and Arduk it's only 800ths of a second. So these guys are getting closer and closer, as we have only got 3 minutes of qualifying remaining now. So 1/4 to go, and you can imagine all of our drivers now with a little bit of fuel worn out of the car and the tyres in a fresh state. If they're not coming in for tyres right now, they will be in the very near future. But they're all going to be going once again. And in fact, we will come back to Vitor Knight. We've just heard that he set a slightly faster sector on his out lap there, so this is not going to count as a qualifying lap. But I think Vitor will be thinking to himself that he has got a very good lap underneath his capable hands and feet, and he'll just want to get around there now and absolutely nail the lap. As we look around, we see Slimmy Cam has got it very wrong coming out of turn 11, hitting the wall and spinning out. That's a disaster for the driver. And we've got Buster, who's just come through, not improving off his current 1:46.7. I think Buster may want to consider quickly going for a change of tyres here, although I think he's actually come across the line. It's too late. Hellcat right now on the fastest car around the circuit, I believe. And let's see what Hellcat's able to do. Well, it saw a personal best there. It's a personal best. My apologies for the green timer up on the left. It was a 1:46.9, so still currently running in at P11 in terms of qualifying, but Hellcat improving on lap time and inching closer and closer to Buster, who's currently P10. Now let's take a look at Vitor, who we are hearing is on a bit of a charge. So he's already into sector number 2. And let's see as he comes through sector 2 into 3, whether he's able to set an absolute blinder or just a personal best. Coming into turn number 6 and into 7, you can see getting it very nicely lined up there. Could perhaps get a little bit tighter to 8, but perhaps the Mercedes is not giving him the rotation that he may desire at that point. It was a very smooth line though, and we can see that actually he's 7.5 tenths down in his previous lap, so this is not a noticeable improvement right now, so unless he's got something lined up. Meanwhile, the current provisional pole lap of a 1:41.8 by Trousers Doom. Trousers eking away from the rest of the field in terms of setting laps that are getting closer and closer to what we saw in EU Division 2 yesterday, and really starting to move into the upper echelons of EU Division 2's qualifying laps. And Vitor not improving here, still in red and down on the previous time, and going wide there, realising I think it's time to abort that lap and get one more in, because he has got just under a minute to get to the end of the line. As we can see that in front of him, we've got a driver who has got things a bit wrong, and Buster is immediately getting out of the way, not wanting to get in the way. Another driver coming through as well in the form of Arduk. Now, will Arduk have improved and be going for that front row position right now, knowing that he's got one more lap to go after this one, because he's got ample time and he's timed it right to get across the line, as has Buster, mind you. And Arduk does improve to a 1:42.8, now only 900ths of a second down on edge in that P2 position. And the first of our drivers then coming through to complete their final qualifying lap. Well, it will not be the guys coming across the line right now, as Hellcat comes across and does not improve. And then in the back of the shop, we've got the Porsche driver of, I believe, McCall, who does not improve either. So those are the last of our guys coming around to start one more lap. Meanwhile, looking around the field right now, we're just skipping across cameras here to find the driver who's going to be the first one across. It will be Slimmy Cam, who is improving at the moment, trying to improve from that 1:46.0. Can he get further up the field here? As Slimmy comes around to complete his last qualifying lap, then it is going to be a 1:45.5, a good improvement, but no improvement in position. And Furky there coming to the end now and not able to set a new lap. And just taking another look around, we have got Trouser Doom coming across the line here, and it is not an improvement. So sticking with that 1:41.8, I think he'll feel confident, almost a second over the rest of the field, that he will have got the job done in qualifying, unless somebody can surprise us. Bright Spark not improving from that 1:43.2 there. And then we look further around the field. We've got Jerry, our driver, coming through with a 1:43.5. It means he's in P7 currently and a little bit of a bright spark there. So those two are going to be close to one another, I think, over the course of the race pace. As we can see, that Edge has picked up a penalty, so that means an aborted lap right at the end there. That's unfortunate for Edge. Must have picked it up upon entry or exit of turn number 17. So that's a 1 second penalty. It's very rare you get a 1 second penalty around here unless you've made a major cut by comparison with your competitors. We've now got Vitor Knight coming across, and Vitor will set a 1:42.6. So he has now moved on to that front row, and I think that is going to be it for the battle for the front row as Arduck has come into the pits. And we've still got some more drivers coming through right now. And have we got any more improvements occurring? I can't see anybody improving as Buster does not improve. And then we've got Hellcat coming through on a final qualifying lap here. And we've also got one other driver who is out of our camera shot right now, who's coming across the line to complete their qualifying lap. And we're not hearing of any improvements from that driver. So Hellcat's going to be the last driver across the line. Will Hellcat improve and potentially nip Buster for P10? As he comes across the line here, nope, no can do, sir. So that is the end of qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. As all of our drivers are parked up, let's take you through that order then. So your pole sitter will be Trousers of Doom from the United Kingdom with a 1:41.8. 8 tenths up on P2, which has gone to Vitor Knight from Portugal. A very impressive final lap from Vitor, that 1:42.6. We then move over to Edge, who's going to be starting off the second row. Also a Portuguese driver, the other Team Vodafone Mercedes driver with a 1:42.8. Very close between the two Portuguese driver. And let's not forget, lining up alongside Edge will be the Dutchman, Arduck, who's running around his own Sauber Mercedes for a 1:42.8, missing out on P3 by only 1/10 of a second. We're then going to see, starting off the third row, Furky the Viper from Turkey, who picked up a 1:43.0, an impressive lap by the Turkishman. And alongside him will be BSR's Bright Spark in the Jaguar. The first of our Jaguar drivers here were 1:43.2. And then starting off row number 4, it'll be Jerry R, driver from the Netherlands, with 1:43.5. Sizable gap, and then we'll see McCall in P8 with a 1:45.0. Slimmy Camel 1:45.5. And then a couple of drivers now leaving, so we're not going to take you through the rest of the field here, but we do have some absolutely brilliant qualifying laps there, and it's all to play for. And we should point out that it was Buster who was P10, and bringing up the rear of the field, it was Hellcat. And Slimmy Count, I believe, was P8 or P9. So now we're just waiting to get underway with race number 1. But the big question I think we'll be asking ourselves right now is, given that Trousers has shown a huge amount of pace in the qualifying session, how will that pace be converted in terms of race pace? Can we expect Trousers just to pull away at the start, or is there going to be a sting in the tail? And what we may see is actually, you know what, the drivers line up alongside and around him, so particularly Vitor Knight and also Edge and also Jerry R driver. Will those drivers be as far, well, not a Jerry R driver, sorry, Arduck? Will we see those 3 drivers essentially try to usurp Trousers of Doom in the run down to turn 1 and in the opening lap? And will we see some close fighting as a result as we go over the course of the first 6 laps, which make up race number 1? It's all to tell, of course. And then we've got quite a tight midfield, and then we've got a couple of drivers towards the rear who are quite tight towards one another. So it's going to be a good battle, I reckon, for around P9 to P10 in the form of the likes of Buster and also Hellcat. So don't rule those guys out. Bright Spark is just heading around circuit right now, just showing what the Jaguar can do, of course. Bright Spark having a relatively good qualifying session, lining up on that third row of the grid, if we remember correctly. And just flying through here, and you can see just how well planted he is in that Jaguar, coming through the corners, getting the perfect lift there through turn 8 in terms of the capabilities of the Jaguar. You can see using the full extent of the track limits. I've definitely said that Bright Spark has been practicing with this car quite a bit in the run-up to today's event. Now charging up towards turn number 12 and then through 13. And just flying with that wonderful V12 engine. And we just had the time of day change, so that means race 1 is just round the corner. And I do not make any apologies for the fact that I am Jaguar biased. But of course, I will try and be as neutral as possible throughout the commentating of the races. As we can see that our camera has glitched a bit there, but it's finally fixed itself. As everybody's now starting to head out on circuit to get ready to line up on the grid to get underway with race number 1. And if anybody wants a little bit of a running joke whilst we're waiting to get underway, in a race series I was taking part in only about, what was 3 to 4 weeks ago, some of you may remember there was a glitch on GT Sport where custom racer lobbies could not actually run a successful race. So what the drivers and I had to do was do a parade lap and then line up on the grid, and when somebody counted it down, because we couldn't of course have any start lights, somebody had to count down, and an external steward had to count down from 5, and then when we hit 0 everybody went underway, and they essentially took stock of how many laps had been done when the finish line would come up, because it was meant to be a 20-minute endurance race. Well, we say endurance, that's relatively short, but a 20-minute long race, there wasn't a lap count, it was 20 minutes and then you finish the lap that you're on. So we had to get somebody to actually police the race for us, which was quite good fun and very unpredictable. You can see Bright Spark there really revving the guts out of the Jaguar, and as a result putting a bit of wear into the rear tyres. And we've got Arduck around as well, just going very slowly. And you can see what Arduck is practicing here, is practicing a quick race start. Not only the fastest of starts there, interesting enough, in that Mercedes. That was a much better start from Arduck, not overcooking it in terms of applying the throttle and then building up the throttle rapidly once the car gains traction. That's what you want to do. You don't want to overdo it in these cars for the simple reason that if you do that, then you're going to be going nowhere and the wheels are just going to spin and you don't go forward. Instead, you just sit there and your race time goes backwards. And race 1 is about to get underway. We've just had it informed to us by the stewards. The capable hands of MDC 3755 will be getting the race underway. So here we go then, race 1, ladies and gentlemen. On the right, Trouser Doom. On your left, Vitor Knight. Behind them, 2 Sauber Mercedes in the form of Edge and Arduck, who'll be looking to get past the 2 in front of them. How will it go? 6 laps will tell us the story. Just waiting for the lights to go out now. And it's lights out and away they go, and Trouser Doom has had a relatively good start. The guys on the second row of the grid bogging down, as has Vitor Knight. Although Edge has had a reasonable start, and Furky Viper going up into the inside, trying to get the move on the guys in front. And Arduck has had to take to the escape road, returning to safety, but cutting into the racing path of a number of drivers on turn number 2. But it looks like everybody's made it through relatively safely. There's been quite a bit of contact between the drivers there, but I think everybody has been able to get through without major issue. And you can see Trouser Doom and Vitor Knight already running away as Slimmy Cam gets a little bit sideways coming out of turn number 4 there, as they're all now running down towards turn number 4 for 5 for the first time of asking, and Furky on the outside, Slimmy Cam defending quite heavily to the inside, and they're all charging up the hill, and Bright Spark has lost out 1 position on the start, and it looks as though Slimmy Cam has had one of the best starts of all the drivers so far as he's making his way into turn 6. But you can see at the head of the train right now is Arduck Killer, and this is holding everybody up a little bit, and I think Arduck is going to be under a lot of pressure from Furky the Viper as they're now coming in the rundown to turn number 11 as they approach Big Banky Boy. Time number 1 of doing so, and I think Arduck will have enough pace here to hold off the charging Turkishman behind, although Furky almost goes to move that, and there's been a collision. You can see that Furky tapped the rear of Arduck and immediately broke out of it. A bit late on the reactions there, and that meant there was a concertina effect with Slimmy being caught up behind it as well, but everybody is still racing and underway, and it has calmed down a bit, and we can see behind the rear view picture we've got Jerry trying to get past Slimmy Cam here, but he's fallen back a bit as Edge has gone wide and will now need to burn that penalty as they come on onto the start finish straight, and Furky has gone wide and off out of turn number 15. That's very unfortunate for the Turkish driver there. You can see he just went wide and got it very wrong. So as they come across the line, it is Trouser of Doom leading from Ardot Killer. Hold on a second, what happened to Vitor Knight? He's down in P7, and then we've got Slimmy Cam in P3, Jerry in P4, Edge in P5, who's battling with Jerry right now, and he's aiming to defend at the same time from Brightspark, who's trying to go around the outside and get the cutback, but he's not able to do it initially. Now will Brightspark get the further cutback out of 2? It doesn't look like it, as Edge has planted the car, but it means Brightspark has got the inside line into 3. Now coming through 3 and into 4, I think Brightspark will have got the move done on Edge here, as Edge has gone very wide under braking, and that is a move for 5th place by Brightspark, the Jaguar driver moving up. And we look forward now, and you can see that Slimmy Cam is being pressured very heavily by Jerry here, and Jerry just not able to get enough pressure on to go for a move, but Slimmy Cam having a very bad run out of turn 5 by comparison with the Dutchman, and the Brit is going defensive immediately as they come up into 6, and you can see further behind Brightspark has been overtaken around the outside, although hold on a second, I think Edge has gone wide and Edge has got it wrong and dropped down to P6 once again, but returning to the battle for P3 right now. You can see that Jerry is up into P3. He got it done through that series of corners, and Slimmy Cam is struggling at the moment in order to get back, and he is making that struggle work in the fact he's got the run. The Jaguar having the legs down the straight into Big Banky Boy, and he's got it deep on the brakes, and he's had to lock the brakes up in order to keep the car stabilised and avoid running off the circuit, and that means Jerry is back up into P3, and Slimmy is now holding up Brightspark, it could be argued, as they're both coming charging up here. There's a bit of lag with regards to Slimmy's perspective by the looks of things, but Brightspark is all over the back of him, and I think Brightspark will want the fellow Brit to get out of his way so he can go hunting after P3, but it's not happening right now. As you can see, Brightspark taking that tighter line into 15. It's costing momentum, but Slimmy is really struggling to carry momentum through the corners here, and Brightspark's going to go around the outside under braking into 17. You rarely see that, and Brightspark has made it work as they come onto lap number 3. Phenomenal move by Brightspark there. Now further down the order, you can see that Edge in the background of your picture is closing up on these guys, but let's not forget as well some other drivers. McCall currently in P7, we've got Vitor Knight in P8 after that disastrous moment what appeared to happen coming into 17. Let's see if we can get what happened to Vitor Knight. So we can see here he's coming out of 15 to 16. He went onto the curb at 16. Now, did he just go wide? Yeah, he went right onto the grass and then had to get the car back under control. And I get the feeling the car's just gone wider and wider and it's gone into the wall. And that explains where the Portuguese driver ended up. So that's why he's down in P8 right now. That's very unfortunate for him. But as we move further down the field, we can see that Buster right now in P10, and he's got Hellcat after in P11, so we'll keep an eye on those two. Trousers dominating up front by 6.1 seconds, and then really your closest drivers on circuit right now in terms of battle, and it will be Edge being after Slimmy Cam in the battle for P5, and you can see that what Edge is being able to do is just driving more consistently, and Slimmy just seems to be letting some nerves settle in here, because he did have a very good opening half to the race so far, but now that opening half is starting to fall away, and you can see that whilst Edge is not getting as close, that Jaguar really demonstrating its power in the run down to turn 11. He's just carrying too much speed and not braking early enough, alternatively hard enough, and Slimmy is struggling. I think as they're going to go side by side, Edge tries to go for the cut back into 13 because he knows he's going to be on the inside for 13, but he's got so much momentum he's got to try and hang that he can't hold it, and by doing the double cutback it's worked out for Edge, and now he's up into P5, and I think we need to go back and see just how he did that, because that was a phenomenal set of cutbacks. So riding on board, you can see he goes to the right here, but he knows he can't hold it around the outside, so he cuts it back to the left, and then he cuts it across on the natural racing line, and Slimmy loses all the momentum there, and that was well done by the Portuguese driver. That was very smart racecraft there as we switch away from his onboard perspective and look to the rear of your shot, and you can see that Vitor Knight tried to, and hold on a second, what's happened here? We've got a bit of an incident where I think Furky the Viper has just simply gone off and had to take evasive action not to hit the wall, so we are going to quickly flip back and see what happened with Furky as he was coming into the final corner. Then was it just simply a late brake, or was he carrying too much momentum? Looks as though he tried to do what McCall did but carried too much momentum and then had to quickly skid the car away from the safety barrier on the right hand side, avoiding the Amco barrier, and safely and well caught by that man. Hold on a second, we've got some battling behind, and we can see that McCall has dropped away, and Buster meanwhile has been held up a little bit. Now what has happened to McCall in that couple of seconds there? He's just had a very slow run out of turn 2 and he's got sideways. I think Buster's gone for a move here, and Buster's gone for it very deep on the brakes here, and has Buster then come across on the dirt? No, so McCall's just had a really bad sector 1, and Buster tried to go for a move and could capitalise. But speaking of capitalising right now, Slimmy versus Vitor Knight. Slimmy's been falling back so far. Vitor immediately going to the inside. Slimmy cutting back across because he's got that momentum. And again, the Jaguar showing its legs. But will it be a repeat of last time and that Slimmy just gets it wrong under braking into 11? No, this time, look at the cutback he's got. And it's a collision and they both go side by side. And Slimmy loses it, but Vitor keeps it under control. And I think Vitor will be absolutely cursing under his breath at first, but then thinking to himself, thank goodness I wasn't sent into the wall with him, because he'd be aggrieved at that one. At least from our perspective, he'd feel that way, I reckon. Again, all incidents and that will be reported to the stewards afterwards, but Slimmy now dropping more and more down the field as they're coming up into turn 14, and you can see he's having to defend very heavily against McCall, who's done it under braking initially, but he's carried too much momentum under braking, and it means that as a result he's gone wide upon entry into 15 and now into 16. Slimmy holding on for dear life right now, not wanting to drop any further back, but I have to wonder how long it's going to be before Slimmy potentially sees McCall going for another move, because the Scotsman is not going to wait for it. It'll be Scotland the Brave into turn 1. I think as Slimmy immediately goes for a very heavy defensive line into turn 1, essentially turning turn 1 into a right angle, and you don't want to do that because you'll lose so much momentum through the corner there. And you can see McCoy is getting closer and closer, and Slimmy just does not have the ability to get on the power confidently through sector 1. We thought the Jaguar might have some difficulty, albeit it's got a lot of power down the straight, but he is struggling to just simply get the power down through these low speed second and first gear corners, and it is materialising the fact as McCall has gone very wide, and I think McCall's going to back off a little bit after coming out of turn 4. And looking further up the field, we can see that in the battle for P6 right now, it is Vitor chasing after Brightspark, so the Brit trying to run away, and I think the British driver has got himself a half-second penalty for running wide over the limits of turn number 7 there, and he's going to immediately serve that penalty, and that will automatically promote the Portuguese driver up into P5. Now, these guys were going to be the closest drivers running on track, but now the closest drivers running on track, as we see, oh no, a second, a yellow flag! What on earth has happened to Edge? That's a disaster as he's dropping down the field. He's dropped to P6 and what was a very good P4 at the time, and he's got another driver coming up there. Before we take a look back at that, we've seen McCall and Buster battling here, and Buster's not able to get alongside, and we now switch back to Edge, and he's just dropped down to P6, and he will have the Turkish driver Furky the Viper getting closer and closer. Now let's see what happened to the Portuguese. So he was coming down here, he was in absolutely clear air, he had nobody around him, so you can't say it was an incident with another driver. He was coming up then to Big Banky Boy. Now, does he just simply go on the gravel with two wheels and try to deploy the power? I get the feeling that's what it's going to be. Gets a nice apex, and yep, straight on the gravel, two wheels on the gravel, and two wheels on the curb, tried to get the power down, and it is in tatters in terms of a top 5 finish. Or is it, as they come onto the final lap, and we can see all the way at the rear of the pack at the moment, bar P11, we've got McCall defending against Buster. These two fighting over P9 and what is a good number of points, and Buster going to the inside. Will he have got it on the brake? And McCall going way too deep on the brakes and right into the Amco barrier that marks the outside of turn 1. Well, that is a disaster for McCall, but he'll learn from that, and Buster will be feeling a little bit relieved right now as though he can just carry on his merry way. McCall having the right idea perhaps, but just not the right braking point. But up front, it is Trouser Doom, who's now 10.2 seconds over Ardoc, who in turn is 2.4 seconds over Jerry, our driver. And then we've got Vitor Knight, who is 7 seconds behind on Jerry, but in return 3 seconds up on Brightspark. And the field really opening up at this point. We've got quite a wide field, but we're just going to quickly flick through it and see what everybody's doing. Furky not able to get close enough at this point, I think, to contest, unless Edge has a terrible turn number 11 and repeats what happened on the previous lap. Slimmy in P8, then we've got Buster in P9, McCall in P10, making all sorts of strudel out of all the different corners here, having a bit of a disaster through sector 2. And then last but not least at this point in time is Hellcat 789 bringing that Nissan around and just not having the best of nights at this moment. But coming across your line then is Trouser Doom, the race winner in race number 1 by 10.5 seconds over the chasing pack. We've got Arduck coming around to complete the final lap. The Dutch driver coming home in P2, and it's going to be double Dutch on the podium with Jerry, our driver, picking up P3, the final step of the podium. And then in P4, missing out on the podium this time around will be Vitor Knight from Portugal. And then in P5 it will be BSR's Brightspark in the Jaguar, doing very well for given all the situations been through. Edge holding on to P6 ahead of Furky Viper in P7. Then we've got Slimmy Cam, who's trying to hold on against Buster here in the final corner, and I think he's going to have this unless Buster goes to the move of the century or Slimmy just gets it wrong on exit as he goes wide, but he stabilises the car and he's kept it within the limits there. So Slimmy Cam in P8, Buster in P9, then in P10 picking up the last of the top 10 positions, McCall 83, and then last but not least of our runners, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a hand to Hellcat for bringing the car home, the Nissan R92C, and whilst he wasn't fighting for positions this time out much, perhaps in the next race he will be. Hellcat picking up P11. So that's race number 1, and we can see that your race winner once again is Trouser Doom from the United Kingdom. So let's take a look at those race standings then, and who scored the fastest lap. I think there's no surprises for guessing it would have been Trousers of Doom. What with his pace in this opening race, a 1:41.9 by the British driver there on lap number 5, with a little bit of fuel out the car and a tiny bit of tyre wear or graining on perhaps the rear tyres, but a very good lap. But credit to all of our drivers, of course, for completing race number 1. And it was quite a frantic race indeed. And I think the thing to observe from race number 1 in particular, that was that whilst Trousers did get away from the field, you could see that Vitor in particular was able to keep with Trousers, what with the combination of that wide and quite weak, well, it's called weak in this game, but that long slipstream zone of 2.25 seconds. Vitor was able to keep with Trousers initially until he had that tragic mistake into the final corner. But the return shot of it was that we've also got two very fast drivers in the form of Ardak and Jerry R. Driver from the Netherlands who are fighting for positions. And also don't count out Edge or Furky the Viper, whereby they were all really competing in that space. Bright Spark was more of the fly in the ointment, if you will, just creeping in there in that top 5 for a consistent drive. But it really opened up, and it could be anyone's game for being on the podium right now. It's not going to go to a dedicated top 3. So our drivers are just going to have a quick comfort break. We're obviously going to have a very quick comfort break of our own in the form of taking a sip of water. And if you're thinking about it, now's a very good time to hop and go grab yourself a glass of Coca-Cola, Pepsi or what have you, and perhaps even a quick bathroom break if you need it, because we're going to be back underway with race number 2 within the next 5 minutes. And I should point out, by the way, it is a coincidence that a Jaguar is doing laps around the circuit at the moment. For those who are not aware, I like to keep the camera focused on a car that's actually running around the circuit, because when you start the race or qualifying, if you're doing a qualifying session as well, and in fact, just to show that we're not biased, we are going to switch away from the Jaguar into a Mercedes Sauber. The thing is that the cameras can glitch, and what we can end up have happening on particular circuits such as Interlagos is the camera ends up being positioned about 5 yards, well sorry, not 5 yards, about 5 miles away from the circuit and tracking drivers through scenery, which, yeah, you don't want to watch that because that's going to ruin the race for you. Time of day's changed, of course, and we're now at 11:30. It's fine weather. We've gone from the clouds to a bit of sunshine, I believe. The sun has decided to come out, and of course that will play into the minds of some of our drivers, because now it will feel a little bit different in terms of the visuals of weather, but the track has not changed at all. And there's plenty of lap time out there should any of our drivers wish to clasp it with both hands. And I believe we are hearing, ladies and gentlemen, that there is going to be a steward's inquiry after the races with regards to the trousers that Trousers of Doom is wearing. We believe they may not be standard issue and they may have some Go Faster stripes on them. Perhaps it's sponsored by Adidas. You never know. Gentle rumbling of the Nissan's engine there. Everybody waiting, really. In fact, we do have another driver jumping out onto the circuit right now, which is always helpful. Thank you, Arduck. Practicing a race start here, and again, you notice this, that Arduck is doing some practice race starts, really looking to try and nail that start. And what I think he's feeling here in particular is that he can make a lot of ground on the opening lap, and he wants to nail that start as perfectly as possible. Perhaps he feels he just can't get the start as right as he should be able to, and where the turbo needs to kick in, as we're about to get race 2 underway. And, well, place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Will Trousers of Doom be able to pick up another victory here, or could we see an usurper within the ranks? Of course, the one to watch out for will be Vitor Knight. Will be trying to charge through the field here, having starting a little bit further back this time. Where grid position being determined by race 1's finishing positions. You'll see Trousers of Doom on your right of the camera, and then on your left-hand side, it'll be Arduck, who's going to try and leap past Trousers of Doom in the run to turn 1 and 2. And it's lights out and away they go. And Trousers getting a reasonable start, as has Arduck here. But Jerry, the R driver, getting a good start as well. And the one to watch out for here is Brightspark, who is charged into P number 3. But he's on the outside for 1. All of our drivers, Constantino in through into turn 1. Once again, all of them making it cleanly through. And we can see that Trousers has been able to get a good launch out of 2 and holding on to that P1 position for the time being. Brightspark going round the outside of our driver there through 3. And that means they come into 4. We can see there's a bit of side-by-side there between Vitor and Slimmy Cam, whereby Vitor is trying to go around the outside and getting that run out of the corner to charge it down towards turn number 5. As they come down then onto the braking zone, you can see that our driver not able to get the move, but they were 3 wide temporarily. But Furky going late on the brakes and a bit deep, but that means that he's been able to hold on to P5 for the time being. And Vitor will not be happy with that, because he would have thought that he would have got P5 in his grasp, and now he's got to work again to get back past another driver in the form of Furky the Viper. But as they all come through to begin what is the start of sector 3, you can see Furky has gone wide there, and Vitor is side by side, and Vitor has got the move done before they come down into turn 11. And in the further rear of your screen, Slimmy Cam going for a move here on Furky the Viper, who's had all sorts of issues as a result of his little off, and he's been able to get up into P6. And we can see Buster is up into P8, and he's holding on to P8 as he parks the car coming around the corner there. But they're charging up the hill right now, and BSR's Brightspark, as he's coming through, he's got the momentum run here, and I think he's going to be able to hold on to that P3, as Jerry is being harassed by Vitor, who's now up into that P5, of course. But meanwhile, Edge and Buster are going side by side into turn 14, and you can see that Buster has gone very deep, showing a lot of respect for Edge coming down that inside, a bit too much respect perhaps, as Hellcat's also getting in the mix here in the battle, and you can see that Hellcat is up into P10. So as they come around to complete lap number 1, then it is Trouser of Doom leading the field by 7 tenths over Arduck Killer. Then you've got Brightspark, then Jerry R driver being attacked by Vitor Knight, and then you've got Furky the Viper, then Slimmy Cam, then Buster in P8, Edge in P9, McCall in P10, and it's going to be 3 wide into turn 1. As you can see, Hellcat goes to the move on the inside, a quick lunge, following through on McCall, who created the space for him. And I think McCall here is going to be holding on to that inside apex, as Hellcat goes wide out of 2 and picks up some of the grass there. But a good attempt, as meanwhile, hold on a second, they've gone 3 wide. Arduck, he's been attacked on both sides. A bit of a Moses moment here by both Vitor Knight and also what is at the time Brightspark. As you can see, that Arduck is not having a good run and having to go to the very limits of turn number 5, and this is what Trousers will have been hoping for, because what it means is he can start to run away, as our driver's also getting into the mix here, as Arduck goes defensive to the inside, but Vitor has gone around the outside, and Brightspark is down in P4 and being chased by Jerry, and behind these guys is the Turkish driver of Furky. So we have got 5 drivers all fighting for what is P number 2. As Furky cuts turn 9 way too much and picks up a half-second penalty and will fall out of this for the time being. But as they come into turn number 11 for the second time of asking, wonder if there's going to be a move here, and it doesn't look as though anybody's going for an early move. They all want to play it smart and stay together, because they know they're letting Trouser of Doom run away, and they're right on the cusp of that slipstream zone of the rear of Trousers' car right now. They'll want to not lose that, so that way they've got a chance to run after the Mercedes driver running up front and potentially score the race win here. Jerry taking a wide line as a result, knowing that he can't brake to stay in the direct slipstream of Brightspark's Jaguar there. And you can see Arduck heading to the upper limits of the corner of turn 16's entry, as he's going to go for the move to the inside potentially. It doesn't look as though, in fact, you can see that Arduck has gone wide as a result of respecting Brightspark, and they're side by side as they come down to begin lap number 3. And look at in the background, you can see that Jerry is trying to go for a move as well, not able to go for the move, he's too far back, but he's sizing up Brightspark, and it's almost as if he's trying to send a message to Brightspark, look at me rather than the guy in front of you, as Arduck is trying to hold on, and Furky the Viper is caught up to this group once again, as Brightspark goes to the move on the inside into 3. There's side-to-side contact, but it looks as though they've both made it for okay, but Brightspark has picked up the position for the time being. But you can imagine that Arduck is going to come back in the very near future. Now, whilst they're all coming charging down towards turn 5, I'm hearing this action further back through turn 4. We'll take a look back at that in a second at what's happened, but Brightspark is holding on right now. And so coming up now into turn number 6, and I think things are going to calm down. They're going to form a little bit of a train, and in the rear of your shot you can see 3 wide, and off goes, I believe that's Edge, and Hellcat's gone off as well, and Slimmy Cam almost follows suit. All 3 drivers, they're getting it all sorts of wrong, and that is a disaster for both Edge and Hellcat there, because they were doing well. But looking back up front, we can see we've got 4 drivers all hugging the slipstream here, all weaving side to side. And if you think about it right now, the one who's trying to get past one of the drivers is Jerry, our driver, as he goes Buster down the inside, parks it on the apex, gets hit in the rear by Arduck, and that's a disaster for our driver as he now drops down to P6. He's going to have all the work to do to catch up. It looks as though there's contact towards the rear, and I think there's going to be a stewards inquiry after the race for that one. Meanwhile, you can see, in fact, it looks as though Arduck has backed out of it. He knows what's happened, and he's backed off completely. The sportsman here making sure to show that respect, and this is great by Arduck, but we're hearing that somebody's gone off, and Slimmy Cam has retired the car at turn 11. There's been a disaster there, but well done to Arduck for the great sportsmanship shown. They're getting racing back underway right now, but let's take a look at what happened to Edge there and the other drivers as they were coming into turn number 5. So you can see it was side by side between Edge and Slimmy Cam as they were coming in the rundown to turn number 5, and they went 3 wide here, and you could see that the power of that Nissan of Hellcat as they were all coming in. So it looks as though Hellcat may just not have given the space to Edge, or Edge went wide and then Hellcat went wide as a result of that, I think, to show the respect, or he just went wide naturally on the braking, and that's how it all played out there, ladies and gentlemen. Looking around our field right now, one thing's for certain, with all the fighting that's going on, Trouser Doom has been able to pull away 3.7 seconds over Vitor Knight, who in turn is 2.3 seconds ahead of Brightspark, who is being hounded heavily by Furky the Viper right now, and I think Furky feels as though a podium is possible here, but he's going to have to work hard to use that Mercedes engine versus the Jaguar's V12. The little V8 in the back of that Mercedes, not strong in the straight, but gives it a good amount of kick in sectors 1 and 2, and you can see that's being rewarded. But further back from these guys, meanwhile, they're fighting once again, albeit cleanly still. It's Arduck versus Jerry, and Jerry will want to get past Arduck here cleanly this time, we hope. But up front, meanwhile, Furky is going to be trying to go for the move on the inside against Brightspark into turn 11, and I think he's got it done. Parked it right up alongside Brightspark, making sure that Brightspark couldn't get the run back in, and they both made it through cleanly cut. And meanwhile, in the rear of your picture, you can see that Jerry has been able to get through there. Turn 11, he's up into P5, and Arduck behind right now as they're both charging up the hill, and we look back towards our battle for P3, and we see that Furky has been able to hold on to P3. Well done, that man, for the time being, as Jerry is in P5 right now, and Arduck behind him, not able to hold on as closely as he perhaps like at this immediate point in the race, but there's still 2 laps to go come the end of turn 17 here. So keeping our eyes out on what else is happening on circuit, I can tell you that there's another move going into turn 1, and it's going to be Brightspark, and he's trying his best to just lunge it in and park it on apex. Will he get it done? He hasn't been able to get the overleap on Furky the Viper, and it means that Furky can return the favour into turn 2. You can see that Furky is positioning the car such to make Brightspark have to work for it, and Brightspark got on the power too soon there, and the wheels spun up, and he's been able to pull away. Meanwhile, hold on a second, what has happened here? I think Arduck's had a bit of an off here, and we're going to just double check what happened to Arduck through turn 2. So you can see he was very close behind Jerry as they went into 2. Now, did he just simply get on the power too soon? It looks as though he did. Yep, got onto the grass and then had to cut the throttle immediately to keep the car under control. That is unfortunate for the not the Danish driver, the Dutch driver. Meanwhile, further back, we can see that in P8 right now is McCall83. battling with Buster, J24, and I think the 2 of them are going to be contesting this position for the rest of the race. They were battling back and forth towards the end of race number 1 as Buster is looking to the inside here coming into turn number 5, but he's far too back to be able to go for a move by looks of things. We're looking back up front and we can see that Furky is actually, hold on a second, what's happened to Brightspark? He's lost a huge amount of time. Now, was it just simply a penalty, or no, it looks as though something's gone wrong for Brightspark because he was that far back initially, perhaps just a mistake out of turn number 4. That's normally turn number 4 into 5 and then 5 subsequently. That's normally how you lose a lot of time, but we can see that Buster here sizing up a move on McCall as they're coming in the run down to Big Banky Boy, and as we ride on board with Buster, he's going to go to the inside. Would he get under braking? No, he can't get it done under braking and thinks better of it, and instead what you can see is by sticking to that line here, he's just going to be upshifting through the gears here and simply trying to look for a move elsewhere. We're going to stay on board with Buster as he charges up through 13 and into 14, and you can see McCall having a very rough run through 13 there. Oh goodness me, and there was a collision there. McCall braking extremely early compared to what Buster anticipated, and I think Buster was caught by surprise there, and I'm wondering whether he's going to just be seeing a flash of red on his screen. Alternatively, he'll calm down and think, right, I've got one more lap, let's get it done on the final lap, let's take McCall down, because Buster was caught by surprise by that braking by McCall there for sure, and that was a near fatal accident for the pair of them in terms of their racing aspirations for this round. Now, coming up through the field then, we can see that the field has spread out a little bit as we look around. It doesn't look as though we've got any drivers within, say, 1 second of one another, as everybody has spaced out a little bit. And we can see Edge here just having a quiet race in P7, the second of our two Vodafone Mercedes drivers here, what with Trouser Doom leading the field away. And Edge having a bit of a quiet race here, especially after the opening lap where he seems to be right in the thick of it. But he has fallen off a bit here and perhaps just simply driving it conservatively right now and saving up his energy for the final race. If I was in Edge's position, I'd be doing the same in honesty, because you're not going to cut down 5 seconds unless you have the lap of your life in this final one and your opponent ahead of you makes a mistake. And really, Edge right now just got to get that car home. But speaking of getting it home, McCall having a very slow run into turn number 6. And you can see Buster once again trying to get as close as possible to his British opponent here. Both drivers from the United Kingdom, of course. But it looks like McCall, the Scottish driver here, trying to hold on for the glory of Scotland versus Buster, who's charging down. But coming across your finish line is Trouser Doom to pick up the second win for race number 2. 2 wins out of 2 so far. Then Vitor Knight's going to come across in P2. And then behind him, Furky the Viper in P3, Bright Spark in P4. Probably wishing he was on that podium this time. Jerry, our driver, is going to bring up P5, the final of our top 5 positions. Arduck a little bit behind, but he wished he was able to get that top 5 here. Then it's going to be Edge coming across the line from Portugal in P7. Congratulations to him as well. And then McCall, I believe, is still holding on just about versus Buster as they come into 16. The gap has opened up to 1.3 seconds here. I don't think McCall's going to get overtaken in the run down to the finish line, so I think he can feel pretty comfortable so long as he nails the final corner. McCall's going to hold it together and bring it across the line. That is P8 for McCall, P9 for Buster, and then last of our running drivers after the retirement we saw earlier is the Hellcat 789 in P10, finish off the top 10. So there's your final classification, ladies and gentlemen, and congratulations to Trouser of Doom. So taking a look at our standing screen then from race number 2, you can see again the fastest lap went to Trouser Doom with that 1:41.9 on lap number 4. Albeit the gap this time was not as major as what it was in race number 1. It looked as though Trousers was feeling a bit more pressure, but again, that battle for P2 opened up between 5 drivers at first. They started to fight, they fell off of the back of Trouser Doom, and you imagine that Vitor in particular was probably thinking to himself, if only I can get away from the chasing pack and get on the back of Trouser Doom and simply drift away with him, then that will work out for the Portuguese driver's aspirations, because you can see now that is second place for Vitor and he will be wanting to challenge for that win in the final race with 12 laps instead of 6. A big shout out, of course, as well to Furky the Viper, picking up a podium here. Now, that was an impressive effort by the Turkish driver, really putting a lot of pressure on Bright Spark. And Bright Spark as well, to be fair, having probably the best of the starts out of our drivers and moving up the field, but not able to hold on to P3 in race number 2. Our driver and our duck showing great respect amongst one another and great sportsmanship in the battle for P5, eventually going to Jerry. And Edge just having that quiet race in P7. And McCall just holding on for P8 against Buster, and Hellcat coming behind, 53 seconds off our leader, but not far off of P9 in P10. So again, once more, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have about a 5-minute break, if that here. So it'd be a good time, if you haven't already, to go grab yourself a drink. Alternatively, go take a comfort break in the bathroom and return for race number 3, which will be the 12-lap endurance race, where, remember, all of our drivers will have to make a mandatory pit stop. And it's never too late, driving Dutchmen, to support your favourite driver and scream and shout for them. We've still got one more race to go. And we can see that we have got a bot in the stream here. So we are just going to give it a polite nudge towards the ban area. Goodbye, little bot. And I appreciate, I assume, the compliment there, Chronic Opal. I'm about saying this sounds like Formula 1. I do love doing commentating. And thank you, Rob, as well, for saying he's not the F1 commentary guy. I must admit, one of the things as well you'll find, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen it already, I don't normally look at the live stream chat midway through races, it's only normally in breaks, but a lot of the series that I've commentated on, normally it's one race in the evening, or the races are so close back to back I don't have time to read through chat. So I apologise if it feels like I'm ignoring you or not acknowledging you. It's just the formats I commentate in, but I'll do my best to obviously make reference to people. As we see Spinola also in here as well. Welcome, Spinola. Just going to take a quick sip of water as we're now coming around to the evening. I see. Well, it's good to have you in chat, Edge. And I hope that you're feeling feisty for the final race of tonight. You've got good pace, and we're hoping to see you contest in that top 5 because we know you've got the pace to do it. Good luck to you, and good luck to all of our drivers, of course. We're ready right now. So what to expect then? We know from EU Division 1 and EU Division 2 that there is no apparent need to take on a fresh set of tyres over the course of this race. Now, of course, our drivers here may not be as conservative on their tyres as other drivers, as Furky leads the field out then to begin what is effectively the equivalent of a parade lap to get to the start-finish line and light up on the grid. But some of our drivers here may feel as though they need to take on the fresh set of tyres. But I think if drivers can afford not to, that's going to help them out massively, because that will save them approximately 3 seconds and turn what is an 8-second pit loss into a 5-second pit loss. And we've seen that the tyre wear only really seems to kick in around the final third of the race, so lap 10 through to 12. Take a breather. Well, thank you to Mrs. Stanley. We are also waiting for one individual in particular, so I believe that is Slimmy Cam to rejoin because he did retire. I believe that the brakes of the car just simply failed going into turn number 11. The car went careening off. But thank you to the safety features we have in the barriers in the circuit and, of course, our safety marshals. We're able to extricate Slimmy Cam from the car. They've got it back. They're doing repair work on it at the moment, and we're hoping they can get it out on circuit within the next couple of minutes. Now, given we've got a bit of time whilst we're waiting, let's point out a little technical thing here that those who are a little bit uninitiated may not notice. So, what you're going to see, now of course we're riding on board with Furky, who has a bit of a latency connection compared to us, so we're not seeing it completely in real time. But what you'll notice when he's going through corners, Furky, and he's doing upshifts mid-corner, you're going to see that the rear of the car seems to judder between gear shifts. Now, that is a little bit of a latency thing as well, but also remember, if he's got steering input applied and he's upshifting through the gears, these cars with their manual transmissions, there's a half-second window approximately, whereby effectively what the car is doing at that point is it's changing through a gear. So when he's trying to put the throttle down, the car's not actually applying any power at that point in terms of acceleration until the gear has been selected and input. So what that means is if he's got full steering lock on, he's getting additional rotation because the car's no longer trying to both steer and power, it's just purely trying to steer. And what you can imagine is, if you talk about a car in terms of it doing, it can split braking, steering and acceleration across 100, the number 100 or a percentage of 100%. If you're applying 100% throttle and you try to apply steering at the same time, you're not going to get the full effect of either one. It's the same with braking. If you try to brake and steer at the same time, if you apply 100% brake, the car's not going to turn, or it's going to turn so gradually because you lock up the brakes and you lock up the steering as a result. And that's the thing you've got to know is those interruptions. That's why this time when he's coming through turn 17, you see how smooth it was there, because what he's doing is he's letting the car settle through the corner, and that was a very smooth exit line out of there, because he's getting the car to only do small amounts of both accelerating and steering at the same time. It's more gentle steering inputs through the corner. And now you can see he's adjusting accordingly because he's getting a feel for the fact the car can only do a certain amount. As he's coming through 3 here, you can see coming all the way to the left-hand side, and he's going to throw it across apex. Not quite as much as he could have there, but you see he's trying to get a bit more smoothness in the driving style there, and that will help with tyre wear as well as overall lap time. We're just waiting to see whether we're able to get Slimmy back in. I think our stewards are going to have to make a decision in a minute if they can't. And I think our stewards just giving some of our drivers a little bit reminder of keep it relatively clean. We did have a number of incidents in the first couple of races, particularly race 2, although I don't think there was anything intentional. I think it's just a reminder, if you do knock somebody off, just wait for them or give them back the place. Because if you are feeling a bit cheeky in terms of giving places back, and we still haven't got Slimmy Cam in here, but if you are feeling a bit cheeky in terms of giving places back, what you can try to do is give the place back just before a braking zone and staying on the inside. It's a naughty thing to do, but you can do it. You effectively give the place back to then take the inside line and retake it. Well, I may have so with regards to providing information, I may have a little bit of a surprise in store for next week's live streams. I'm going to have to speak to the organisers and see whether we can do it. Won't talk about it now. If we're able to do it, I'll let you all know on next Monday. But we've got potentially a little surprise in store in terms of a little addition to the stream. Again, we won't go into that right now because we like to keep surprises. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, so we were not able to get Slimmy Cam back out on circuit, so that means we are going to have 10 cars running the final race. It's the 12 lapper, it's coming towards the end of the day. Titus is going to be kicking in, and here we go. Who is going to come out on top? Will it be a triple from Trousers of Doom, or will Vitor be able to get into the mix and wreak havoc with Trousers' aspirations for the triple? So it'll be Trousers of Doom on your right hand side, behind him Furky the Viper, who's been looking strong, and there'll be Vitor Knight on the left hand side with Bright Spark behind him, who's had some very strong starts. And it's lights out and away they go, and it looks as though Trousers has had a reasonable start, but keep an eye on Bright Spark here, who's had the best start of the 4 of them on the front 2 rows, going immediately to the outside and trying to get that cutback line on the inside into turn number 2. And you can see he's got that inside line, and Bright Spark again making a very bright move there and charging in behind Trousers. And is he going to go for the move into turn 3? He almost does, as Vitor drops back to P4 and Furky's up into P3 right now. And meanwhile behind them you've got Jerry R Driver, who's battling with Vitor Knight. And the one who's lost out the most here is Arduck, who's all the way down in P9. Now they are going to have to settle down as they go into turn number 5. It's going to be side by side between Jerry and Buster at this, in Edge at this point. And Jerry going very late on the brakes, and I think there's been some sort of coming together there, because it seems as though all the field has backed it off quite a bit from P4 downwards, as Vitor is now in P5, but meanwhile we have got Jerry chasing after P2 and P3, as we can see that Bright Spark is really feeling some pressure from Furky once again. Furky absolutely hammering these opening laps, and we can see that behind Jerry has picked up a half-second penalty and is burning that, which will promote Vitor Knight back to P4, and Trousers is not getting away as rapidly this time, and surely Furky and Bright Spark have got to be thinking to one another, we've got to work together to keep after Trousers here, because if we don't, it's not going to work. And in the rear of your picture you can see that unfortunately we have got one driver in the form of Arduck going flying off circuit there. That's a disaster for Arduck, but away from Arduck right now we've got Vitor in P4 still, Jerry in P5, and then side by side into turn 14 we've got Buster, who's gone for the move, but he's gone very late on the brakes. He's gone too deep on the brakes, just collects it before going onto the grass. That was a good attempt by Buster, but unfortunately just too much momentum. He's going to carry too much momentum into 16. As you can see, McCall's bumped into the back of him. But as lap number 1 finishes, it is Trouser Doom coming across the line, battling for P2 right now. Bright Spark and Furky, who we're going to stay with as Furky goes to the outside, and Bright Spark is going to defend as relentlessly as possible, but Furky is going to get the cut back into turn 2, and I think Bright Spark's not going to be able to close the door, but he will get that really good acceleration as we've seen time and time again into 3, and these two are costing each other so much time right now when that P1 is just up the road. Jerry R driver in P5, who is running away from Edge very slowly here. And then in P7 we've got Hellcat, who's really gained through a series of incidents. Buster and McCall having a bad hash of it in the battle for P8. And then we've got Arduck all the way down the bottom of the field. And the car has been retired. It looks like the car is not being recovered at the exit of turn 11. And our stewards are going to be calling out that needs to be removed, because if anybody goes for an overtake there under the yellows, they are going to pick up a penalty, normally a 2-second penalty for overtaking under yellows. And our drivers have got to be wary for that. That car being parked there is going to cause problems. But Bright Spark right now falling well away from Trouser Doom. You can see that gap has opened up over the course of half a lap to 2.8 seconds already, and Bright Spark defending to the inside. These guys are not thinking about the race lead, they are thinking about battling for that second spot on the podium. And Vitor going for the move there, the lunge on the inside, and it means he will have to back out of it because he has not got enough momentum coming up into 12 and then 13. But meanwhile, speaking of momentum, you can see that Furky is carrying a lot of momentum by comparison with Vitor and getting straight back into the slipstream zone of Bright Spark, a much tighter slipstream zone. He's getting a really good run into 15, and looking further back down the field, we can see that we have got an incoming battle between what I think is going to be McCall and Buster once again as they're looking into 14, but nothing so far as Buster goes deep. But as they come around to complete another lap, we can see that Bright Spark is causing the mother of all truly trains here in Division 3, and he's holding up both Furky and also Vitor Knight. Now, when things do settle down, we will have a look back at what happened on lap number 1. Oh, hold on a second. Furky's got it very sideways, a bit too soon on the power, and almost collected Bright Spark's rear left side panel. That means that he's dropped down, and Vitor is now up into P3. And in the rear of this picture, look who's made a return. As Arduck has retired the car, he's just had to retire the car, we've heard. And that means that Arduck is now out of contention, and we've got 9 runners remaining in this final race of the evening. And these guys are all battling for P2. It is 5 drivers once again contesting 1 spot on the podium, well 2 spots on the podium really, and this is absolutely ludicrous. And who's going to be on that podium at the end? You love to see it as Edge goes for a move onto the inside of Jerry R driver into turn 6, and he's got it done, and Jerry's giving him the space because he knows he can't afford to fight too much because he wants to be in that battle for P2, not the lonely battle for P5. There'd be no value in that. And we can see, meanwhile, that Buster is still holding on to P7 and pulled away from McCall. But forgetting that for now, Bright Spark pulling over immediately to break along the slipstream line. And you can see Vitor carrying way too much momentum there and almost collecting the rear of Bright Spark. And that means that he's had to back out of it. And Furky is now looking to get a move done, potentially up into 14, as they come up here for the 3rd time of asking. And meanwhile, behind them, you've got Edge and Jerry both battling away. But these guys are not giving each other any rapport at all. And they're just fighting back and forth as there's now approximately a 3.7 second gap between second and first. That gap is slowly eking open, and the question will be which one of these drivers will be the first to pit. As you can see that Furky has had a bit of an incident, and Edge goes to the move on the inside into turn number 17, and we can see that Jerry R driver has had to back out of it as he's most wide a little bit by looks of things, and Edge has had a hash into the final corner, and that means he's going to have to defend to the inside into turn number 1, and he seems to have got it collected on braking. He's overextended the braking zone to give himself the inside defensive line through 2, and he's gone wide onto the grass, and you've got to watch out. No, goodness me, it's almost in tatters for both Furky and also Jerry, but Jerry put the brakes on immediately, and also Edge, you could see he slammed on the anchors because he knew he was going to take the Turkish driver out. Good spot by Edge, that was very good sportsmanship, and that means now, ladies and gentlemen, as they battle, hold on a second, we've got a battle for P7 in the form of Buster, Hellcat, and also McCall. Hellcat holding on at the moment, holding on to what is his best position running on track so far, as he goes very deep through turn number 3, and I think Hellcat's just made a mistake there as he's going to stay out of the way of both Buster and McCall as they come out the corner. McCall going wide as well, but using the full width of the circuit. Meanwhile, coming back to the battle for P2, we can see they have settled down now, and it is just Bright Spark and Vitor Knight battling for that P2, and immediately Bright Spark knows that Vitor is trying to use every bit of slipstream he can to stay with the Jaguar, because that Sauber just does not have the legs by comparison with the Jaguar Jaguar initially in the run down a big banky boy, and by doing that, Brightspark is essentially pushing Vitor to the limit in terms of saying to him, if you want my slipstream, sunshine, you're going to have to come for it and grab it, because I'm not giving it to you freely. But under braking here, coming up into turn 14, you can see that Vitor is just so much more aggressive on the brakes in terms of his approach to the apex of the corner, and that's how he's closing up so much. The Jaguar driver just does not have that innate aggression at the moment or capability to be as aggressive. But as we go around, looking further around the field, we can see that our driver has dropped down a little bit. And going even further back, we've got Edge, who's fallen all the way back 6.3 seconds after what happened on turn number 2 on the last lap, lap number 4. And he's picked up a further half-second penalty for running beyond track limits there into the final corner. And he'll have to burn that at the end of this straight. If not, he'll have to burn it in the run down to turn number 5. Now coming away from Edge, of course, Buster holding on to P7 right now ahead of McCall. And then we've got McCall having a very, very slow run out the final corner there. And I think Hellcat feels that there's a move coming on. So we're going to stay with Hellcat here. He's going to go for the move, I think, as we ride on board. And he's looking right behind, coming under braking. And he's not able to get it done in the Nissan. But they both go very deep on the brakes, mirroring one another in terms of their braking patterns there. And I think they're both just simply feeling the weight of doing 3 races in one night. It seems to be getting to the legs. But up front, running away right now, 7.2 seconds ahead, I should say, is Trouser of Doom. But the battle for P2 doesn't rage on at the moment. It looks as though Brightspark is pulling away from the Portuguese behind. But Vitor Knight will know that there's still over half the race to go. And he won't be giving up that easily. Whilst it has spaced out right now, ladies and gentlemen, remember, we have got the pit stop coming up. And, of course, the pit stop is going to throw a conundrum in, because if a driver comes out behind somebody who hasn't pitted yet, alternatively, just someone who is a bit more aggressive and wants to gain the place and then be a defensive nuisance from that driver's perspective, well, it's going to be a matter of a case that they've now got to get past, and they'll lose time in the process of battling their way past. So Furky the Viper right now is the man on a mission. He knows he can be back on that podium, but he's going to have to work hard to get past Vitor, because of the fact that Vitor is a very smart driver, it would seem, a very collected driver, and he will want to finish on that podium once more tonight, after getting that P2 in the previous race. Now, as they're coming out, we can see that Furky is the first of these 3 to come into the pits. Now, does he put on a set of fresh tyres? It looks as though he is putting on a fresh set of tyres, so Furky does feel that he will need a fresh set of tyres to go to the end, and he has come out in a good place. And Jerry, right, meanwhile, has not taken on a fresh set of tyres. You could see how quick that pit stop was, but it means he's retained his P5 versus Edge. And as we look further down the field, we can see in the battle for P7, it is Buster right now who's still holding on 1.3 seconds, 1.5 seconds actually ahead of McCall, who has picked up a penalty going through the final sector, and it means that McCall now is probably going to be looking to come into the pits in order to mitigate the time loss. No, he's still staying out there, but Hellcat is going to gain a place, and Hellcat up into P8. Now, we look around the field once more as they come onto the halfway point of the race now. We're coming to the end of the first half of the race, we should say, and Brightspark is now starting to fall back into the clutches of Vitor once again. He's not too far off the pace of Trousers, but you do have to wonder whether Trousers is just controlling the pace at this point and thinking to himself, you know what, I can control this a little bit better. So we're just going to see what happens here as Vitor is getting closer and closer, but you can see that Sauber just does not have the acceleration. He gained in the run down to turn 11 there a maximum of 2 tenths versus the Jaguar, despite literally being right up the chuff of the slipstream vapors of Brightspark's car. He just hasn't got the pace to outrun it on the straights, even in slipstream Vitor. But what he does have is the inside line into turn 11, and he goes for it on the brakes. You could see he trailed it in there very nicely, and he's positioned it well, and that was a very smartly planned move by Vitor, and he's got it done. Now, will he be able to pull away? Because the question will be, of course, what will happen in the run down to turn number 1? If they both hook it up, surely that Jaguar is going to come back with the limited straight into turn number 1, what with its stronger acceleration in the upper echelon of gears. But Brightspark is getting closer and closer, and that gap is only 2 tenths at the moment. But then you can see under braking how much it's opened up. It opened up by approximately 2 tenths under braking there as Edge comes into the pits from P6 at the time. And it looks as though Edge is going to be coming back out in P6. He has gone just literally for the stop, not a tyre change, because it was less than 8 seconds. As you can see, that Brightspark has made a return. He's gone for that little cheeky lunge on the inside into turn 4. I think there was a little bit of contact there, but they're showing each other great respect. But in return now, Vitor's going for the move to the inside in turn number 5. These two are not giving it up. And of course, what this will mean is that Furky, who went for that pit stop, who is now less than 4 seconds behind these two, he is going to leap potentially potentially Bright Spark when they come into the pits, and even Vitor if Vitor cannot break away and they continue to fight. So that is a major concern for these guys right now, as Bright Spark picks up a half-second penalty. The track limits at turn 7, and what that means is Bright Spark now is guaranteed to fall away to Furky the Viper, and Furky will know that he will have got P3 when Bright Spark hits, and now it's up to Vitor to absolutely go hammer and tongs to make sure that the same doesn't happen to him when he comes in for his pit stop. That's a disaster for Bright Spark. It means he's going to have so much effort to put in, but Furky must be praying right now and thinking to himself, come on Bright Spark, just go into the pits, get out of my way. I know I'm going to have P3 so long as you don't block me for much longer. And looking further down the field, you can see that Buster has pulled away, and there is a battle ongoing for P8 in the form of McCall and Hellcat. We'll keep our eyes on that, of course. But meanwhile, up front, Bright Spark is holding on to that P3 right now, and he is costing Furky a bit of time here. And you can see the gap between Vitor Knight and Furky is starting to open up. It is currently 3.8 seconds, but that is going to open up to an excess of 4 seconds. And Vitor has come into the pits. Now, this is important as Bright Spark has gone one more lap. Now, Furky will be absolutely loathing this because he was hoping that Bright Spark would have just gone into the pits, got away. Look how close Vitor Knight has come out right behind, and he's had to take immediate evasive action because he came right behind Furky, and I don't think Furky anticipated that Vitor would be that close behind him. And I'm pleased to say, ladies and gentlemen, in the battle for P8 right now, McCall is ahead of Hellcat, but they're still battling going through turn number 15. But we're going to stay with these three right now because I get the feeling that Furky is going to be going for a move anytime soon. And actually, whilst we do have a very, very quick breather, unless... Well, actually, no, I'm not going to say we're going to get a breather because Furky's not going to let us have one. And he's already got the run. And he's going to go to the outside for turn number 6 here. But he's not able to get it done initially. But you can see just how much stronger the Sauber Mercedes is under breaking that into 6. And he's got that momentum. He's picked up a half-second penalty for track limits. And no, for Furky, it's gone from great to terrible because he knows now... Pardon me, he's going to have to take that penalty, give the place up to Vitor, and he's got it all to do now in terms of getting past Vitor rather than defending against Vitor. But he must also know that if Vitor's able to fight with Bright Spark and potentially they take one another out, then Furky has got the opportunity of a lifetime here to pick up the surprise P2, and he'll be pushing hard for that. So it's chop and change here in the battle for P2. These three drivers just not giving one another a moment's reprise, and it could go anywhere at this point in terms of who is going to be on the final 2 steps to the podium. But as we speak about that, look who comes into the pits. It is Trouser Doom coming in for his routine pit stop, also probably a cup of tea, and then coming back out onto the start finish straight to complete 4 more laps. But meanwhile, we can see that Vitor right now is staying out as he would be expected because he's already pitted, and Bright Spark is into the pit. So now Bright Spark will be coming out towards the rear of your picture, and look at the very rear of your picture, ladies and gentlemen. Keep an eye on the left-hand side of your screen. You can see that Jerry R Driver has gained massively through the fight in between the top 3 in terms of that battle for P2, and that means now we could have a 4-way fight as Vitor is holding on to P2 currently, but you can see he is having to drive defensively against Furky. And with Bright Spark only being 2 seconds down on these two, and then Jerry being only a further 1.5 seconds down on Bright Spark, we could see Jerry get into the mix of the battle of the podium here. And this could be absolutely sensational. Should one of them take one another out, we could see an absolute surprise for Jerry R Driver here. But surprises so far, we're seeing that the field is opening up further towards the rear, and McCall is well beyond Hellcat now in terms of around track. So it looks as though that battle for P8 has calmed down for the time being. We're just going to follow Vitor Knight here, and we're actually going to ride on board with Vitor looking back from his car, and you can see as he's going through the fast section here where he's absolutely flat out that Furky has not had the best of runs through turns 6, 7 and 8, and what it means is Furky is a very long way back by comparison, and even further back of course is Bright Spark. And wait a minute, under braking, look how much Furky is closed up under that braking. He closes it up by 2 tenths automatically under the braking there, and that's the offset in terms of their braking points. And you can imagine here at this point Vitor's going to want to calm it down a little bit and just simply run some consistent lines to get the car home, because it's been absolutely crazy night for Vitor, and all of these drivers are going to be absolutely knackered by the end of this one, I feel, as Vitor is running along still. And whilst we have got a moment, let's see if we can flick back to what happened on lap number 1 with all the carnage on lap number 1 as seen from Vitor's perspective, because he was the one right in the middle of it. So you could see that Vitor was right on the outside here as they came down to turn number 5, and as they charged out, in fact we'll come to edge because it'll be easier, and everybody just started to go 2 by 2, and Vitor was on the outside, and it just looks like everybody tried going 2 by 2 through the corner, and then everybody tried to defend to the inside to defend on one another. But that's then, and now we're back to now, and of course Vitor's still holding on to that position, but Furky is getting closer and closer, and Jerry is getting incrementally closer, but not at the rate he'll want to catch up on these guys. So I think Jerry here is just thinking about holding on to a good P5 and not making any mistakes. And if one of the guys up ahead has an incident, or alternatively they really start battling, he'll just get towards these guys via attrition, and that will be how he'll pick up a place if he's going to pick up one. Because we see that Jerry is not setting our timing screens on fire right now, but to be fair, if he brings it home in P5, I think he'll be over the moon for that, and indeed his team will be proud of that one. But we can see that Furky is getting closer and closer, and he's losing out a little bit as they're coming out of turn 8 in particular. That seems to be where Vitor has the upper hand on his Turkish opponent. The Portuguese seems to know how to manage Sector 2, the latter half of Sector 2, better, and you can see that deployment of power is much greater as Furky almost goes off there and uses 2 wheels of the gravel and 2 wheels of the curb, but straightens the steering immediately, meaning he's lost no time, but he's gained no time as he could have gained out of Big Banky Boy. But that's the thing about Furky, you can see that he just has so much more confidence on the brakes in Sector 3 and 4, and that means that he's just gaining so much, and it's Sector 2 where Vitor is just holding on for life, as Trousers of Doom now sets the fastest lap of a 1:40.7. I think Trousers here is just trying to show that he could have been in Division 2 if he'd been able to get the time trial set up perfectly, but we're not going to say here nor there. Trousers of Doom putting in some phenomenal fastest laps as these three are coming along, and we're just looking at our screen right now, and we're not seeing any close proximity as Edge has picked up a little bit of a penalty in P6 and falling further back, and we've got Buster running around in P7, McCall in P8, not close enough to really contest one up, and Hellcat all the way down in P9. So we are going to focus on our runners for P2 for the rest of this race, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you don't mind with that, because it could kick off at any moment, in all honesty. And as you look back from Furky, what you've got to imagine here is that from Brightspark's perspective, as we actually jump to the onboard with Brightspark here, he's going to be thinking to himself at this point, how could I get close enough to these two as they continue to fight? And actually, let's move away from those guys. We can see that Furky has actually gone round the outside. Now, how on earth did that happen? We missed that slightly off camera shot there. We're just going to wait and see if there is the return challenge from Vitor, but I think Vitor just got it very deep on the brakes. So Furky went for a phenomenal move into turn number 5 and made it pay dividends. And immediately Vitor has come out to the left-hand side here, and Furky defended to the inside. And I think Furky's going to try and go as late on the brakes as possible. In fact, he's gone quite early on the brakes compared to normal, and Vitor almost went onto the grass there, and you can see, well caught by that man, and Furky placed it very well and cut away Vitor's momentum as he tried to go for essentially the aggressive cutback through the outside to inside on Furky there through Big Banky Boy. Now let's just take a very quick look back at what happened there into turn number 5. So we can see that Vitor just simply seemed to have got it very tight under braking and just got it wrong, and Vitor lost all momentum under braking. I think he just got the braking wrong there for turn number 4. There wasn't exactly a move made by Furky, but he saw that Vitor had made the mistake, and he made it count by carrying more momentum. As it's now final lap, as Furky goes very wide there, he's got to be careful because he may pick up a penalty for running that wide if he continues to do so. But we're on the final lap now, and well, with 16.2 seconds between Furky and Trousers of Doom, who has just come out of turn number 4, it looks as though really the only battle is going to be for P2. Who will come out on top? Will it be the Turkish driver of Furky the Viper? Will it be Vitor Knight from Portugal? Or will it be BSR's Brightspark? Or will it be Jerry R driver who pops the surprise at the final hour? It's going to be close and it's going to be tense, but really I think it's going to be between the two drivers who are currently in P2 and P3 respectively in that battle for P2. Now, who will go for the move initially? I think Furky will feel as though he's got everything done, and he just needs to nail turns 6, 7 and 8 and then hold off the charge from Vitor into Big Bakey, because he knows that's where his opponent is strongest. It is through 6, 7 and 8. No need to pick up a penalty here as Vitor does the ultimate cut if he can through turn number 7, try to cut as much as possible, and he's nailed it. And you can see that gap has come down by 4 tenths alone because of how he's nailed it. And look how wide Furky went there, and Vitor is all over the back of him, and he's pulled as tight as possible to the inside line. Furky trying to make it an impossible corner for Vitor to go to the inside, and Furky is defending as much as possible. Will Vitor hold it around the outside? And there's a little bit of contact, but Vitor's sailing in behind, and it doesn't look as though Vitor's got it done this time, and Vitor's going to try and get the run up into 14. We will of course need to switch to our leader to bring him across the line, but Vitor is going to go for it. No, not, oh, he's gone for a very late lunge, and he's going to hold on, I think, as Trouser Doom comes across the line in P1, but we need to focus in. Vitor was on the inside through turn 15, and I think he's been able to get it done, and there might be some questions by Furky afterwards whether that was a bit of a push to pass there, but you could see that Vitor went for it as late as possible into turn 14, and it paid dividends, and it means that Vitor's come over in P2, Furky in P3, BSR Brightspark in P4, Jerry R driver in P5, and then we've got quite a way back to P6, which is the form of edge, where he's going to be coming around very shortly to complete the race just outside the top 5. But congratulations to the Portuguese driver. And then it's going to be 41 seconds back to Buster, who's holding on to P7 right now. And we can see that Buster is coming through, and I think he's got a nice gap here to McCall in P8, so he's going to be a little while to come to the finish line. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause for our drivers who are running from P8. Hold on a second, I think McCall's just hit the wall there a bit coming out 13, but give a round of applause for our drivers who are bringing up the rest of the field. Everybody deserves credit for the fact that they've all been racing tonight and they've been able to finish all 3 races. And McCall is getting closer and closer, but I think Buster here is just going to hold on a little bit longer as he comes into the final corner. No need to make a mistake now. Just bring it home in that P7 and be happy with the result, and Buster will be, as behind him we can see McCall in the rear of your shot in P8, and then we've got a further 30 seconds back to Hellcat, the Nissan R92C driver. It hasn't worked out for Hellcat today. To be fair, Hellcat has had some fantastic battles with Buster and McCall, whether it's on the opening lap or in fact in race number 3 he did have some fun battles with both McCall and Buster, but he just didn't have the pace today. But still plenty of promise from Hellcat shown today, and you can imagine that going into week number 2 he'll want to improve on his positions and pick up a little bit more pace compared to what he had here. So Hellcat brings it across the line to finish the race, and all 9 drivers who were able to finish. And of course your race winner, Trouser of Doom, making it the triple-triple. What a cracking set of races, and here are your final results. So with the 9 drivers who finished, it was Trouser of Doom who won by 17.6 seconds over Vitor Knight. And I think Vitor, Furky, Brightspark will all be thinking to themselves tonight, should I really have fought as hard as I did for position? Should I have instead just simply try to follow the other driver and chase after Trousers of Doom and see if Trousers made a mistake? I think they're all going to do a little bit of thinking. They might also be speaking to one another separately about some of the little elbows and door contact. But to be fair, for the most part, it was clean, at least from my perspective. I think they can all feel proud of themselves for their results. Vitor picking up 2 P2s, Furky picking up P3 here, and Brightspark just off of the podium, but he'll feel happy with that result, I reckon. 9, he was within arm's reach of the podium. And our driver, Jerry, picking up that P5 there to round off our top 5. The fastest lap going to Trouser of Doom at 1:40.7 on lap number 10. And I think with that, we have got King of the Karts. And because I haven't done King of the Karts for the first 2 rounds of tonight, we are going to be doing King of the Karts very shortly for you, ladies and gentlemen. And I just need to give my vocal cords a rest. I think what we have seen here today is that whilst there did seem to be a optimal car in EU Division 1, and that was reflected in Division 2, the mix of cars here in Division 3 has meant we have seen a good mix of results. And also we've seen cars which really have strengths and weaknesses. No one car in tonight's race, if you exclude Trousers of Doom being the anomaly point on the graph, if you will, there was no one car that dominated here in EU Division 3. It was a good mix of cars. We saw the Jaguars had the strengths on the straights, but they lost out in the corners, whereas the Saubers gained in the corners, but lost out on the straights. And then the Porsche 962 was just the all-rounder. But we are waiting to do a little bit of King of the Karts, and I have to say it'll be the first time that I've driven with a PlayStation 4 controller in a very long time for that. But if you have enjoyed tonight and you're only here for the 3 races and the live commentary of those, well, thank you very much for tuning in, of course. It was a pleasure to have you here, and I hope you all have a great end to your week. And of course, we will be back for more live commentating on Monday in terms of GTSRL. But if you're sticking around for King of the Karts, we'll see if we can do our best here and get a decent result. So I've got to try and figure out how to drive one of these again. With a controller, that is, because I have not driven with a controller for a very long time. Can I get a view change perhaps? Because this is absolutely like there. No, not quite. There we go. That's better. Feels weird being back on a controller after being on steering wheel and pedals for pretty much the whole of this year. Now, if you're wondering, if anyone's wondering why you'll have controller players and then you'll have people with steering wheel and pedals, and then the next big question is, well, which one's better? Neither one's better in terms of overall. If you look at the Gran Turismo Sport FIA World Finals, you'll find there's drivers there such as Daniel Solis from the United States, who are controller players who had to convert to a steering wheel and pedals for the purposes of the World Finals. And then you have drivers such as Valerio Gallo from Italy, who will be on steering wheel and pedals by default. So that's how they've always driven. Each one has its advantages to an extent. One advantage you do have on controller, for example, is that with regards to steering, as I'm about to show you, you can apply full lock instantaneously. Like that. You can essentially apply lock in a much more instantaneous manner, as we're about to get underway. Whereas with steering wheel and pedals, you have a lot more finesse by default because of the fact that you've got the resistances in the pedals and also the steering wheel. But here we go then. Let's see how we can do in the King of the Karts for EU Division 3. And we're going to be starting in P8, go all the way down the back. Oh, steady on, steady on, steady on. Calm it down, calm it down. We can catch back up, we can catch back up to the pack. It's 2 laps. MDC doing MDC things, getting in my way, much like season 34. He said that was a funny incident where he returned to the circuit and the one driver he would block would be me as I bumped into the back of him, his teammate. So MDC, lovely guy, one of the loveliest people you could ever know, MDC. Hey, that's a bit unfair, Chronic. What was all that about? We may be on different sides of the world. So they're fighting one another up ahead, so we're going to try and get a bit closer. proper tarmac on this circuit as well, which means I'm able to get good runs through the corners. Use the over rotation of third gear there. I'm going to get mugged with a reverse Moses. Yep. Got to stay with these guys and potentially pick up a place in a minute. For Jerry to get in the way because he's all over the road. Thank you. Whew, that's my first ever King of the Karts win. I'm well chuffed with that. Whew. Well, there's a first for everything. I had to go for Division 3 for it. To be fair, we had Eclipse, MDC and a couple others in there and Chronic Opal. Yeah, this is the one and only victory that ever counts. Oh, goodness me. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings to a close the racing and whatnot for tonight. It's been a pleasure to be your host as always. I have been TX141, Britain a Spit, or Paul Walsh, depending on what media you follow me on. And remember, as always, to stay safe, stay well, and stay awesome. And remember, if you're looking for more live commentated racing, come back tomorrow night for the Ace Lift Design Endurance Championship 2020 Season 6, Round 7. But if you're here for GTSRL, come back on Monday for EU Division 1 as they get underway as the series heads to France for round number 2 at the Sainte-Croix Alley Circuit. But until then, take care and all the best.